Hi everyone, a very warm welcome indeed to CCA Convention 2021, from surviving to thriving. The past 15 months have been really challenging for all of us, and it's been a real privilege actually to work with so many of you in the CCA network to come up with some pretty creative solutions and share insights, share lots of different aspects in this new world. In particular, we've looked at new working models. We've looked at technology, implementation, procurement, what works, what doesn't. We've looked at some of those relationships. We've really looked very carefully at changing customer requirements. There's a huge agenda around that post-pandemic. And of course, something that's rising to the top of just about everybody's agenda is workforce well-being, as we really need to focus hugely on what's been a really disruptive year for everyone. So we've come up at CCA with a whole load of new initiatives, from our CCA Heroes to the Inspire programme, as well as all the other pieces that you normally expect to get from us. Most of the transition and achievements from the last year have relied on really strong partnerships and relationships like never before, and these have been tested to their full throughout this pandemic. The pandemic, if you like, has shone a very bright light on good practice, and it's also shone a light on some of those weaknesses that need to be addressed. And it's through sharing and learning that we can try to help some organisations who are struggling with some of these things to get to raise the bar and catch up with what other leaders are doing in this market. So we're looking to the future. We're also looking at just now, and there's some pretty big decisions to be made over the next few months as we come out of the pandemic around just how things will settle in our future of work. I'm absolutely delighted to introduce today some of these keynote sessions that's short, sharp and to the point. I'd like to thank our sponsors for today, Egain, Quadient and Ring Central, and our support sponsors, Go Contact, Polly, Sabio and Twilio. Thanks to all you guys for huge support in pulling this event together, and we're really looking forward to hearing from your case studies and for your input throughout these 2 days. A big thanks also to our facilitators today. We've got a really expert group of people who are going to take us through our cases and encourage discussion, debate, answer all these questions that we might have. Nicola Collister from Custodian, Andy Menz, who's chair of CCA judging panel for our Excellence Awards, Graham Brown from HGS, and Peter Dovrin from Capita. These four will lead us through our sessions today. So today and tomorrow we're going to cover a lot of ground. Sit back, enjoy, please participate, keep your questions coming, and look forward to catching up with you later. Thank you.
Great, and welcome to the first session, which is What the Tech, the tools that companies will need to navigate work from anywhere. This is a particular topic that is very close to my heart, and something that certainly, you know, work from home, work from anywhere is something that I've been championing for over the last 25 years. We've got a fantastic session for you over the next 50 minutes or so. We'll have an opening presentation from Mark Finnegan. So welcome, Mark, who is the Contact Centre Account Executive from Ring Central. So hopefully we are going to hear lots about what the tech. And then we're going to have a case study, so a brilliant case study from Joe Brackenborough, who is the Digital Transformation Manager from Thanet Council, and he's often referred to as Google Boy. So we'll hear more from Joe shortly. Just before we do that then, so I just wanted to give sort of 5 minutes introduction really, and just some background and context. As I've said, it's a subject that's very close to my heart. I remember going back 25 years ago when I was at the RAC. Yes, I know I don't look that old, thank you very much. But when I was really pushing for getting work at home or work from anywhere, because particularly for a breakdown organisation, that was crucial, because we were trying to grab, you know, loads of people into the contact centre when it was snowing and people couldn't get out of their houses. We were struggling to get people into contact centres. But, you know, 25 years ago, there was no cloud technology. It cost about £7,500 a person to set up. You know, communications was literally picking up the phone and ringing the advisors, asking them what they were up to, or a team manager calling round. And I used to sit there signing off expenses for cakes and biscuits, because they wanted to take cakes and biscuits to every single advisor. And then about 10 years ago, I also launched a work at home model with Shop Direct Group. And I remember doing a presentation, actually, CCA invited me to do a presentation to the industry council members. And when I talked about building a team of 1,200, almost work from anywhere teams within the contact centre, I think I would describe it as people were gobsmacked. So there's a nice northern saying for you, because I think it was almost how on earth can you do that? With the tech, with the communication, with all the risk and control. So, but look, if we think back now over the last 15 months, this is probably the hottest topic, other than Brexit previously, and clearly the challenges we've had with COVID. I think work from home, work at home, hybrid working models, are we coming back to the office, is a daily topic for everybody, from the government through to the news broadcasters. I think what's interesting is that certainly, from BBC's point of view, they did some recent research of 50 of the largest UK employers. And of those 50, they said there was no plans to bring back staff full time, and those 50 large organisations would be adopting a mixture of home and office and remote working. So that's the top 50. We've now got, obviously, the government. So Downing Street have confirmed that the government is actually considering legislating and making work from home the default option. However, they were then very careful to note that the Flexible Working Task Force, which is now looking at this, would be looking at how best to proceed, and they would make it a default option, but they wouldn't make it a legal requirement. Interestingly, on the reverse of that, we've now got the Confederation of British Industry, which is another lobby group, which is now saying it's opposed to giving workers the automatic right to work from home, and that the default must be that businesses should control where work is done. So I think it's on the one hand, we're here one day, it's going to be the future, and then on the other hand, there's lobby groups now that are lobbying, to get us back into offices and back into the city centres. CCA did some research at the back end of last year, and I think, look, there are still clearly, lots of organisations that have had to work from home. We've all had to shift to that model or work from anywhere, but clearly there are still some challenges. So I think, we were forced into it. This was a burning platform we were all forced into across the world. But, some of the issues that came out of the recent CCA survey were around, reliance of connectivity, so broadband internet, phone connection issues. 75% of the members that replied to the survey said, those are some of the things that they're worried about. Some of the technology restraints and issues, 72% said that's what's, keeping them awake at night. So hopefully we'll hear some fantastic solutions from Ring Central around, the tech that's out there now to help us do that. But also then, not just about the tech, but just remote management of team members. And there's been lots of, again, lots of research now about welfare and well-being. And team managers, lacking experience of being able to manage these hybrid models. So how do I manage a group of people that are at home, and I've got a group of people that are in the office, and I could have a group of people that are working, elsewhere. So how do we, start to think about this whole hybrid working and this blended model? So I think fantastic topic. I'm going to hand over now to Mark. So Mark, as I say, the account executive from Ring Central, and over to you, Mark.
Thanks, Nicola. I think your opening summary was better than my entire presentation, so I'm going to pinch a lot of that as I go along. I think I'm going to stay away from a lot of the platitudes and things that we've seen over the last 12 months, because I'm sure everybody's fed up of hearing about the new normal, hearing about unprecedented events and all that kind of thing. So, and I'm also going to be a little bit of a tease, because I'm kind of going to show you really high level what we can do. We're not really going to show you exactly what we do. So, I hope that's kind of a follow-up, so you come and see us and you learn more from us. And I think, I've taken the topic work from home, but really it's about how do you provide service to where you are anywhere in the world, really. So for the first time ever, work's not somewhere you go to, work is something you do. It's not actually limited to the location you're actually in. And that causes some really interesting dynamics in this day and age. And we've had some interesting experiences with our customers, good and bad, but overall, what we've found is that simplicity is the key to adoption. Yeah. And simplicity allows us to react to DR situations incredibly fast. The third one I'd add to that is that nothing allows you to innovate like cloud. Yeah, so speed of innovation is incredibly important, and that adaptability allows us to kind of evolve these kind of situations into something that works for everybody. So first of all, I'm going to have a look at just a couple of minor topics, really. And as I say, I'm going to be a little bit of a tease. So, why service customers from home is an interesting question. But what we've seen is that not necessarily driven by the pandemic, but certainly we saw an acceleration of these services. Especially digital services have been accelerated phenomenally in people's strategies. They might have been a year or two down the line, some even out as far out as 5 years' time. And they've now come to the forefront and they're being implemented in months now. So digital strategy has been a massive take up from our customer base. And let's be honest, I don't like to wait on hold. So why would your customers like to wait on hold? So offering options around how would you like to connect to a contact center, whether it's via phone, whether it's via email, via social media, messaging apps, whatever comes tomorrow, the speed of adoption around that piece is frightening as well. But you want to be able to do that based on what you want to do. And that simplicity is incredibly important. And also from a productivity perspective, your agents can manage more than one interaction at a time. If you have a quiet spot, why wouldn't you have them answering email? Why wouldn't you have them answering chat? So the dynamic has changed as well. So suddenly it's not about just sending agents home to handle voice calls. It's to handle chat, to handle email, to handle social media. And how do you stay on top of training packages and things like that when we're acquiring new agents now, we might never have met them face to face. Yeah, that's a real interesting emotional side of the role. But flexibility has really been key, and there's some really interesting metrics that have come out over the last 12 months. And I know, Nicola, you spoke to a few of them all already. But one of the interesting ones from me is that, there was a Frost & Sullivan report not long ago that showed that 80% at home agents versus 25% of in-house agents from a retention rate. I think that what it means for qualified agents, for a company with a training budget, that's a phenomenal statistic, and it did drop towards the end of the pandemic, but it still stayed quite high. There was a significant difference between the two. And also from an agent perspective, looking to be employed by your company, 80% of them now, according to an international workforce study, are now looking for remote work options as part of that interview process. So that hybrid piece, that remote piece is incredibly interesting. But we've also seen that customer satisfaction has improved, and that's really not a difficult metric. I've always worked on a really good algorithm in contact centers. If you have happy agents and you have happy customers, it drives great customer satisfaction. Yeah, that's not really a magical formula, but really you've got to do lots of different things around it. What people don't realize are the softer side of things of being able to work from home. You're not actually operating within a specific catchment area. Now you're bringing a cloud service in. Your agents can be all across the UK. You can look for different talent pools to come into your agent. You can actually offer work to people that don't need to travel now. So, single mums, working dads, whatever that may be, but maybe with 3-4 hours to spare in the evenings when the kids are in bed, now they don't have to travel, so they can just jump on the phone for a couple of hours. Yeah. And that's really another really interesting dynamic, that we've seen across the workplace. And then obviously from the businesses side of things, it's the actual reduction in costs. So the saving money on office workspace. I mean, Ring Central itself, we went through a massive office refit. Our offices look absolutely beautiful on PowerPoint because I've never been there for a year. Yeah, but that's been an incredibly frustrating thing. But the saving on equipment, on furniture, on supplies, the agent commute. The productivity from myself, I can actually speak to this myself. You know, I can do 6 or 7 customer meetings in a day now, where before I could do one because of all the travel time. Never mind the frustration of 5 hours on the M6 before you get to the customer meeting. So, you know, lots of great things from that. And you'll see a quote here, you know, that C-Trip, one of the travel agencies that we deal with, they've actually calculated they've saved more than £700 per employee each month on just reduced office space. That's before you start building in any more of the return on investments. You know, so there's some great things for that that we can link into that. And then, you know, I know Nicola built this up. This is the exciting bit. You know, this is where Ring Central kind of come from. And again, you know, I'm a massive believer in simplicity. So we're going to use this infinity symbol to really symbolize what Ring Central stands for. And we pride ourselves in each piece links to each piece. Yeah, so on the right-hand side of the symbol, we see what we call Ring Central MVP, or message video phone. So people will traditionally know this as unified communication as a service. And I'm only mentioning this because it's important because it underpins our contact center. But we have really rich messaging. So you'll all have used a messaging platform. I suspect most of you might have used Teams recently over the last 12 months, you know, but we have our own, similar to Teams, but obviously I'm incredibly biased and would say better. Video, you know, we're using a video solution today. That's something that Ring Central offers. And phone. But what's incredibly important about these services, they're actually unified. So a single client, I've been chatting away to Nicola on IM, the conversation's getting a little bit convoluted, a little bit messy. So I can just escalate on that same call to a video call, to a screen share. So really nice, really simple to use, just simple point and click. But then the really interesting piece is when you move over to the left-hand side. And really, we do contact center in 3 different pillars, just for actual simplicity. So we do incredibly rich voice services, so inbound voice, skills-based routing. But actually the piece that's most exciting is we do it from a single pane of glass. And the whole thing is just based on roles-based access. So Nicola could be an agent today. And sorry, Nicola, you're in my screen, so I'm picking on you. But Nicola could be an agent today. We need Nicola to be a supervisor. We just add supervisor, and all those permissions, all the things that Nicola needs to see from a reporting perspective are now available on Nicola's screen. We might need to do admin, so we add the admin and all that. So it's just very roles-based access. You're a user on the system with the right accesses, but it's a single agent client. So regardless of what you're serving for your customers, it's actually available for you just within a client. So you can do email, chat, social from within a single agent client. And most importantly for this subject, it's browser based. So when you're in the office, you're logged into your agent client through your Google Chrome. Guess what? Google Chrome's also my favorite browser at home. Yeah, so in the pandemic situation, or let's say a DR situation now, let's get away from the pandemic. We're coming out of it now. But in a DR situation, or an illness where you have to go home, but you still want to complete your shift, you can log out in the office, you can go home, you can log back on. All you need is a browser, an internet connection, and a PC, and you have 100% of the features and functionality that you had in the office. So exactly the same tools are available to you. So simplicity to consume service is incredibly core to what Ring Central do. And then we can go around into our digital services, so adding all those things like WhatsApp, messaging, everything, but again, delivered through the same agent client, and then through to full outbound as well. And full outbound, traditionally, I'm sure we've all been on the end of an automated dialer. You pick the phone up, you hear 3 seconds of silence, somebody tries to sell you PPI or double glazing or tells you you've been in an accident when you haven't, you know, but that is traditionally automated dialer. But in the new world, it's more traditionally used for things like appointment reminders. Yeah, I'm sure we've all had text constantly for the last few months about going for your first or second jabs. Yeah, so in outbound dialing solution, it's probably generating all of those SMSs. So I've got a great way to use technology. But really, you know, why Ring Central leads in this space is really kind of distilling that down into something that's incredibly simple. So let's have a look at the word simple. We are a cloud company. We're truly software as a service, so no hardware whatsoever exists. unless the few customers want a handset for retro sake. Yeah, and we can provide those. But actually what happens 9 times out of 10 is I'll go back in 6 months and say, how's that handset doing for you? And it's still in the box. Yeah, because you were convinced the software was the right way to go. But really, it's built, the entire solution is built from the perspective of the business, not IT. So business as usual is meant to be able to use for simple human beings like me. So I can change announcements, I can set IVRs, I can change agent names. I don't need to go to IT, and you don't need to come to RingCentral to be able to do any of that stuff. We are a truly global company, but that means two different things. If you're a UK business only, it still actually means something. It means that we bring enterprise grade services wherever you want to do business. But also because of the size of our estate, we can leverage best practices from many, many different contact centers and bring that to you. Yeah, we are not a faceless cloud company. We understand that contact centers need to be done face to face, but you can consume our software through the cloud nice and easily. We're truly unified. So a single pane of glass, a single client, whether you're a CC agent or a UC agent, you only log in once, and you get all the actual tools available to you from a single login. Mobile first, it's a bad name. Yes, it does work on a mobile, but what we really mean by this is mobility first. Yeah, the ability to work not just from home, but from anywhere, only requiring that browser and an internet connection to be able to do that. Don't get me wrong, there's some subtleties about it. If you've got 6 kids around you and they all come home and log in on their Xboxes or Disney Plus or Netflix or whatever, we need to have a look at the speed of broadband and that kind of thing, yeah? But 9 times out of 10, we have really specialized technology that's adapting to that in the background as well. So, you know, we can overcome that. And then our platform is incredibly open. So for our customers that are using a CRM, such as Salesforce or whatever, we can integrate into that, and we can use all that incredibly rich data you've got in your CRM to provide even further personalized and differentiated routing. Yeah. So we can make sure that when Mark calls in, you know, he's not bothered when Nicola's sat at her desk or sat on a couch in the front room, as long as he can speak to Nicola. So let's see if Nicola's free when he calls in. Yeah. But more importantly, an open platform means that we have a future-proof platform. We can change and we can adapt to your business and whatever comes next. And then I'll just leave you with trust. So we are an incredibly reliable service. 4 nines reliable, 5 nines in UC, contracted SLAs, and we also contract to what we call mean opinion scores. So we'll guarantee the quality of voice on our network. A customer is generally at the heart of everything we do. I said generally, is at the heart of everything we do is what I meant to say. And you know, we're independently audited for everything we do as well. So it's not just RingCentral saying we're reliable. We're SOC audited. We can provide all sorts of trust certificates. And our data centers, for you lucky people doing PCI, doing secure payments, our data centers are actually accredited to PCI level 1, standard within our license. And for you non-techies, the bit I love from a technical perspective is our data centers are all what we call active-active. So what happens is that if we lost an entire data center, the second data center takes over immediately with no loss of service and no ringing into RingCentral saying 50% of my phones are down. It's immediate, zero human touch, no calls in. So a really future-proof solution, top to bottom, that I absolutely love to discuss you in massive amounts of detail. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand back to Nicola, and then Joe's going to tell me the reality of dealing with this kind of thing and bring all of that to life for you. Thanks, Nicola, and back for you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mark. And as I say, I'm sat here thinking, gosh, you know, how I so wished all of this was available, as I say, 20, 25 years ago when I first looked at implementing work at home. So just a quick question, Mark, actually, because as you say, it sounds fantastic in terms of the technology then. And how, as you say, you talked about simplicity and ease. Just coming back to one of the key challenges is around the fact that, you know, in terms of hybrid models, you know, how do organizations ensure that customer service agents feel supported and connected? Because, you know, we've all got a human behavior of FOMO, you know, fear of missing out. So how is that something that your tech solution can support?
It can support. It depends how you're looking at it individually. Yeah, I think that there was kind of an emotional feeling of feeling busy in contact centers, in that you could peek over the edge of your monitor and see everybody on their phone, and it's like, all's good. There's nothing red on my wallboard. All's good with the world, yeah? And you can't see that when we're all sat at home. So some of the actual reporting we brought in is a lot softer. We don't show red. We can do things like show sad faces and smiley faces when we're doing well. So it's not quite as emotive, yeah? But in the background, we can do proactive quality checks against people. We can do real-time adherence to see what they're doing at any given moment. But actually what it means from a supervisor is they can schedule in what look like ad hoc calls, but they're scheduled in the MI. You know, we can do graphical wallboards in the Max client itself. Any changes to agent schedules or anything like that just appear when they're logged in. So the agent always knows what's going on. So lots and lots of tools that give us the information that we need, but are provided in a much softer manner.
Great. Okay. No, that's fantastic. Thank you for that. And I'm sure there'll be more questions. I am checking on the chat function. And again, just to encourage all the audience, if you've got any questions at all, whether it's for Mark, whether it's for Joe, which we're coming on to next, or for myself, then do shout. So we're now going to, as you say, hear from the reality of work from anywhere. And in particular, I think it's been fascinating, actually. Truly fascinating to see what some of our public sector services have done, as well as housing associations and private sector. So it's going to be fantastic now to hear from Joe Brackenborough, who's the Digital Transformation Manager from Thanet Council. I think internally he's referred to as Google Boy. He also alluded to the fact he let this little story slip that previously on a previous presentation, somebody summed him up as Brittany. So yeah, so hit us, baby, one more time, Joe.
Yeah, I wish it was a bit more masculine, to be perfectly honest, but I'll go with Brittany. I mean, she's famous, she's rich, she's beautiful, so let's go with Brittany. I don't mind. Yeah, I'm going to share my screen. I will try and make my presentation as fun and as cool as possible. But I also wanted to say that everything Mark said is 100% true. Like, everything that Ring Central stands for as a company is just perfect. That what you want from a software provider, it really is. And I'll kind of go into that in our thing. So I'm Joe, I'm the Digital Transformation Manager for Thanet District Council, and I wanted to talk to you about our journey through COVID, throughout the other side, and kind of to give you an idea of where we are, who I am, and kind of our digital journey. So this is, I kind of didn't want to put a slide just about me or to say anything about me, because actually we're a big team. So my background is ICT. I was in ICT for 14 years. I was the call center person. I was the help desk person. I was the desktop engineer. I was a security engineer. I was a network engineer. And then I became a technical architect. And that's when I decided, well, actually, I want to go head digital transformation. And actually, I want to take one council by the horns, and I want to shake it up, and I want to make some changes, and I want to kind of really push this digital work anywhere kind of thing and ethos into that. And I saw Thanet. I used to work for Thanet, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to go back and I'm going to focus on one council. I used to work in a shared service across 3, and when you're spread that thin across 3 big councils or 3 little local councils, it can be hard. But yeah, this is my team. We've also got a squirrel. We haven't, I just couldn't find, we've got a new person called Alan, and he's our GIS developer. Couldn't find his picture anywhere on the web. He's obviously hiding. I asked him for it, but he only started yesterday, so I can't really blame him, but he's going to be now known as a squirrel. And that's the funny little thing where it goes, Alan, 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 Alan. That's how he's going to be known to us. Like I'm Brittany or Google Boy. So I thought I'd start by showing you where we are on Google Maps. Obviously, Google Boy, Google Maps. And yeah, I wanted to kind of tell you where we are in the country, because I kind of feel like it's relevant, and it's a big part of our culture being on the seaside. So we're very close to London, and I'm going to zoom in again, and you can see our area of Thanet sort of spans quite a small area. We have around 19 miles of coastline all around there, and yeah, we serve around 141,000 people in our district, and our offices are in Margate, and it's probably the most famous part of Thanet, I'd say. And this is Margaret Beach. We are a coastal district, and not how I spelt it before, which was coastal. Yep, dyslexic, and luckily someone pointed it out, but I felt like I shouldn't get away with it, so I decided to admit to it that I couldn't spell coastal. But yeah, we're quite famous for our seaside resorts. You know, Only Fools and Horses came down to Margate. We've got the only Royal Harbour in the country, and our council are responsible for around about 30 services, but the key services are planning, building control, waste and recycling, and we run our local port and harbour. Let's see what's next. So pre-COVID, as a council, we have about 350 plus maybe 50 kind of contractors, so around about 350, 400 staff in the office, you know, every day. Pre-COVID, we all went to the office. We had one home worker, and that was just because that's what she wanted to do, and she did it. Everyone else was very much like me and the chief exec, in the sense that we all thought the best way to do something was in the office. So we was all in the office, but as I say, we were always planning for this disaster recovery or business continuity. So we rolled out 350 Chromebooks. We removed our Windows device estate. We rolled out 250 smartphones. And as part of that smartphones, it didn't matter if you was a director, the chief exec, or someone that cleaned the roads. I made sure, and I paid out of our budget so that everyone had exactly the same smartphone and everyone had data. I didn't want to buy the Nokia 3210s that you could only call people on. I wanted to give everyone a premium smart device, which we did with sustainable support from Google. Of course, they were Android because Google boy. And yeah, we wanted to give that equality to all our staff, because actually it's more important if you're not in the office to have internet and be able to read emails and those things. We'd moved to Google Workspace, or Google G Suite as it was called then. We removed Microsoft pretty much from our client side of things. Obviously, we've got Windows servers, but a lot of our public, like the staff-facing stuff, is all Google now. We don't use Office documents internally. We use Google Documents, and that was a big change for people. And we just recently spent quite a big investment in our remote access system, because obviously we went to Chromebooks. We started using our remote access system when we were on the network, so that we could get to legacy applications and Windows applications, but we had been moving quite a lot to our SaaS. So we was quite well prepared, I'll be honest. And that was part of our digital vision and drive beforehand. Lockdown happened and we all walked away with masks on. And the staff had some really big changes for them. Obviously, they were working from home. They had to use Google Meet now. There was a big thing about physical meetings, but of course that all stopped overnight. Everyone used Google Meet. If we'd had Ring Central, everyone would have used Ring Central, but we had Google at the time. And yeah, and we all used Google Meet, but we still had to carry on as a council. We still had to do inspections. We still had to do all those things. So we had to use Google Meet to do inspections as well. We had to do video calling to do inspections. For a digital team, we had a short-term focus really of training people, helping them, and basically we just spent the first a month or so as a team kind of putting ourselves out there, hanging on chats and hangouts and meetings and drop-in sessions, virtually of course, just to help people set up their screens or set up their thing, or help them use Google Docs or Google Sheets or anything. The second short-term thing that we had to do was, and we kind of led on this, is, and as a council, I think we was one of the first to carry on doing our council meetings with our councillors. Basically, we use Google Meet to record our meetings. All our councillors joined virtually, and that has been a huge success. And we live streamed it to Google as YouTube as well, so we could comply with the laws that the government have set, but also continue doing our council business. And the other focus that we had to focus on was a lot around culture, and that's the free people with the ties. That is culture to me. It's changing the habits or changing the way people think about the way they're going to work. And the long-term focus was very much our phone system and that communication. We had an on-premise system. It didn't work well at home, didn't work well in the office, to be perfectly honest. And it was something that we knew we had to address. But obviously, when the pandemic came, we had to address it pretty quick, because it is the backbone of the council, really. People, when they have a problem, they want to ring up and they want to speak to someone. And if our phone system's bad and they're getting cut off, and they're having to redial, they're getting cut off again, they're waiting in queues, it's just not good. And we had to really address that. And it's not good for our staff as well, because they want to help people and the technology's letting them down. The other thing we had to do was move stuff to the cloud pretty quickly. There was a lot of items that were on premise, our intranet. We moved that rapidly to Google Sites, of course, Google Sites. And yeah, we kind of moved stuff so that information and everything that we was communicating was available from your mobile phone, from your computer, from anywhere and everywhere. And the other thing that we really struggled with is the security of our cloud applications, because we started pushing more cloud applications. We ended up with, when a new person started, setting up 15 accounts in 15 different systems, and we really had to kind of pick that up. So I guess for me, how we achieved those goals with 3 kind of products, and I'd say 3 key products, 3 brilliant products, 3 products that I would, or 3 systems, 3 companies that I would, say hand on heart are amazing and have been amazing to us as a council. Ring Central, the transition to Ring Central was amazing for us. It was so much better than our first time. We're getting compliments all the time, like, oh, this is crystal clear, this is amazing. I can't believe that. We're able to ring out, we're able to have stats on calls, we're able to add people onto, groups and stuff like that. When the times are busy, we're able to take people off the phones because we've got that information now. And we never had that before. A big one for us with Okta, which is identity provider. We've put all our applications through Okta, and we're pushing more and more of the legacy applications to go through Okta, to upgrade, to go through this one login, so that you log in once, it creates all your accounts, and of course you just log in the once, click on all the icons, and it automatically logs you in. And that was a big push for us, because if we're going to carry on hybrid working, that's really important. And Google, of course, Google Cloud, again, we've built loads of applications and loads of things with that. So when it came to freedom and we were allowed out and we could come back into the office, we said, what do you love about office working, to everyone? And we had about 200 people reply to this one, but they said, what I love about the office is seeing my colleagues, talking to my colleagues, and working together as a team physically. What I hate is being distracted, obviously not riding a bike, but what they didn't like is being distracted by noise, by all those things. What they loved about home working from this pandemic is basically the balance, the work-life balance. They can, get up earlier, start work, leave earlier. You're at your house, you can, start dinner at lunch, or, put your washing out at lunch, all those really boring things that I do. But the other thing that they were kind of missing about home working, which is kind of the first one, which is pretty much that they're not physically seeing their colleagues and they're not getting that team feeling. It's very much virtual, and there's something different about a virtual meeting than there is with a physical meeting, and the people element of it. So we took that survey, and we kind of was like, well, we kind of need to ask again, because we kind of need to ask people, well, how do you want to work? We've kind of listened to the way you kind of feel about the different ways of working. How do you want to work? And we got 106 people answer this, but they said 45% hybrid, 41 home-based, and 8% office-based. And that figure, although it was 106 people, is very similar to the overall numbers now. We have about 30 staff that come in the office. We have about 50 staff that are home-based, and including myself, and then everyone else. So the other people, hundreds of people, are hybrid workers. And our chief exec was leading that the whole way. You know, it came from the top. So we asked them, you know, what's your biggest concern about flexible working? What's the bit that you're going to hate about working from home 2 days and coming into the office? And they said it's carrying all the stuff. It's carrying all the Chromebook, the charger, the screen that I took off my desk. Have I got to bring my screen back? Have I got to bring my keyboard back? Have I got to bring my things back? You know, there was big panic about that. And there was big panic about how they were going to book a desk. Can they sit next to their colleagues? Can they, you know, see where people are sitting? And yeah, we kind of set to work on that. So we came up with the hybrid desk, and we basically narrowed our building down to 2 floors from 5 floors. And I think we've got the basement still intact as well. So around 3 floors, but 2 floors are hybrid floors and permanent staff, all mixed together as well. And we've basically had a computer set up where we've got 2 screens, a charger for their Chromebook, which also charges their phone, because we bought USB-C phones and Chromebooks. And they've got 1 cable to plug in for the Dynadock, which is a Dell dock, which will do their internet, will do their mouse, their keyboard. So all they've got to rock up to the hot desk with is their Chromebook in their hand, and they're lightweight, and yeah, they were quite good. All their storage is now in this like labeled boxes, which they can lock in a cabinet. And we've really kind of pushed that, and we've cleaned out our offices, and we've got rid of all personal bits in that area, and it's all nice and clean, which is good to see. And then the last thing that we had to address really was how people are going to book it. And it was really quite a big issue and quite a contentious issue of how am I going to see where people are, and how am I going to how am I going to book a desk, and can I book it for 2 weeks, and it was on everyone's mind. So the team and I came up with this. We built this from a Google product, and we built it from scratch. It's a map-based system. You click on the pin, it shows you your pin. So if you've booked that desk, you can click check in and you can check out. And we've managed to do this for the 2 floors that we are doing. And people can click on other pins and find out where people are sitting. So if they want to sit next to their colleagues, they can easily do that. We've also tied it into their Google Calendar. So if you look at your colleague's Google Calendar, you can also see where they're sitting. So yeah, it was a big move and a big change for us, but we're kind of getting there. And that's me.
Brilliant. No, fantastic. It's great to see, as you say, you've almost visualized, I think, the booking a desk. It's almost like when we did go on holiday and we booked a flight, how you could sort of look and, you say, book your seat. So again, probably user experience, it's something we're very familiar with using. We
chose 2 things, aeroplanes. So our seats are based as aeroplanes. So they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and come down that way. So it's based on the aisle seats, so that they're all standard. And the second thing is cinema booking. So clicking on the seat that you want to sit on. And we took those 2 concepts because we felt they were the easiest for people to use. And yeah, very little training for people. It's kind of like open it up, click on it, and play around with it.
Fantastic. And just in terms of, so just probably back to that, the communication piece really, Joe, one for you, just how, was there anything around then, if you've got people working in the office and some of the teams are working at home, what have you done to almost improve communication then? So, you know, again, addressing this sort of fear of missing out.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one. We've had people on board and come into the council when we've been in COVID, and you know, how do you get the team ethos, how do you still get them communicating? I think for us, we chose whether you're on site in the office or you're at home, the setup is the same. So use Google Meet, use Ring Central to call people, to have those telephone conversations, to have that thing, and the technology works in the office as it does out the office. So we're giving out headsets, we've given out headphones like these with microphones in them. And we've kind of said, as a standard, if you want to have a meeting with your team, it should be Google Meet, you know, have that video calling. But also we are encouraging people to come back into the office because there's a big people element to the way we work, and you don't get the banter, you don't get the jokes on a video call. Maybe you do with me, but normally people are very much to the point on a video call. It's about business, whereas in the office you will chat about what you watched last night, like Love Island, or you know, something like that. Britney Spears maybe.
On stage. Yeah,
that's it.
Brilliant. And just in terms of, obviously, I think you mentioned about obviously 30 services in the council. So as you say, providing a huge amount of services to all of us, you know, in our communities. How has it worked with partner organisations then? So obviously, you know, you'll work closely with other sort of community partners.
Yeah, I think we've done some really big sort of like leading the way on sort of partnerships. So I can't take credit for any of this, but just the technology maybe I can take credit for. But we have a multi-agency task force in the council. It's just a really good example of, you know, we've got the local police, we've got the fire and rescue service, we've got social, we've got there's so many different, there's about 30 odd organizations that all come together, and they come together under one of our managers who's very good at like kind of strategy and that, but they also use the technology that we use, and it enables them to collaborate, to use you know, documents all together, to have that one document that is all shared, you know. And the beauty of products like Ring Central and Google and Okta is you just need a web browser. So it doesn't matter where you're working, doesn't matter what device you've got. Oh, we use Apple, we use Android, we use, you know, Windows, we use Linux, you know, all these things. It doesn't matter. It just brings you together on one platform because it's web-based.
Brilliant. I think it actually reminds me of, I think I remember back in 2012, actually, when CCA did the first set of future scenarios. They've just done some recent future ones as well for 2025. And it was saying one of the things was around Martini agent. So it was the whole anytime, any place, anywhere. And if you think back in 2012, it was almost, you know, far reaching to imagine that, you know, lots would be working from home, and there was lots of, you know, barriers and reasons as to why, you know, organizations couldn't. But you know, that was a predicted future scenario. We clearly didn't predict you know, what's happened in the last 15 and almost what was the burning platform to instigate that. But no, as you say, I think now it sounds like, you know, certainly with the joys of cloud technology, I think, as back to what Mark was saying, the simplicity and ease of it, the way in which you've built it with the Google apps, again, you've done it with, you know, it almost looks and feels very familiar to what we're just used to using, as you say, booking a cinema or booking a flight. So yeah, absolutely fantastic, and thank you very much. Very informative presentation. And I have to say, as you say, some councils are definitely leading the way in terms of work from anywhere, and also digitizing what they're doing. So, you know, huge well done for that. And thank you, Mark, as I say, for the intro to Ring Central, and again, so, you know, the platforms that can enable this now and make it a lot easier for for people that are running big operations out there.
Yeah. Thanks, Nicola. I think the burning question we're all asking ourselves is, when we return to the office, will people just be smart from the top up and just coming in with Bermuda shorts and slippers on, or will we be going back to suits and ties? That's an interesting dynamic.
It is, and I think we'll just, Pauline, I don't know whether you want to just put the panel question on, actually, just to finish on that, really, just to say, you know, from a polling question, you know, in your opinion, for everybody that's out there, what, you know, when we come out of a permanent, you know, almost this lockdown, not lockdown, semi-lockdown, you know, once it's all lifted and the restrictions are lifted, what do we think, you know, organisations will do for hybrid? Do we think, yes, you know, it will be a fully hybrid model? No, it won't be, or maybe. So yeah, if you just hit your answers now, that would be great, just to get that quick poll. And it'll take a few seconds, because I say we'll start to see we'll finish on the results, and I'm sure it will lead on to many more questions and many more sessions. So 95% have said yes, that hybrid, they do believe, will be the permanent working model. So I think on that note, I would like to thank Joe, thank Mark, and thank you, CCA, for the fantastic session today.
Thank you, everyone. My pleasure. Bye now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, welcome to session 2 at CCA Summer Convention. My name is Pauline Cochrane. I'm Head of Research and Partnerships at CCA, and I'm delighted to be your host for this session. Coming up, we've got a session talking about customer service beyond the pandemic, and looking at a real life case study as to how a particular insurance company has responded to changing customer expectations and changing customer requirements. I guess we've all been party to contacting organisations and maybe losing a bit of patience around, using COVID as an excuse now to maybe not deliver the service that customers are expecting. So I think it's lots of the conversation we're hoping to have over the next hour is to try and get under the surface a wee bit, and to take into account those considerations that businesses are thinking about just now, to make sure that they're on the right path to respond to customers as best they can. I'm delighted to be joined by Steve Kennedy, who is Head of Solutions EMEA at Egain, who's one of our session partners today. And Steve's going to be giving us that overview of the tools that this insurance company have used through Egain, and then also, how they've responded to the piece around the pandemic and their customers. We'll have time for questions at the end of the session, so please use the Q&A function or chat function. If you want to post those questions as we go, that's not a problem. And then I'll pick them up at the end. But over to Steve just now, and I'll be back with you just shortly.
Hi there, and welcome to today's session. Today we're going to be taking you through a presentation around delivering digital customer service beyond the pandemic, and we're going to have a look at how a customer has done it. We're going to be focusing on things like what it means, how to do it, and how to make it go beyond that. But before I start, I just wanted to take some time to take you through a little bit about who Egain are. Egain are a global SAS company providing an industry-leading digital customer engagement platform. This provides you with a multi-channel capability of servicing your customers in the way that they want to be able to interact with you when they're asking you questions or when they're doing business with you. A little bit about who Egain are. We were founded in 1997. We have headquarters in Sunnyvale with offices in EMEA and APAC. And we focus on the omni-channel customer engagement solution. This contains digital engagement capability with multiple channels. We've got artificial intelligence being used to help support your engagement with your customers, underpinned through knowledge management and supported through analytics. So the whole idea is that you use all 4 of these components together to provide a high quality customer service to your customers. We currently focus our product set to the enterprise B2C market space with customers in the financial services, in telco, in retail, in health, in government verticals. So the idea is we can cover a large amount of the businesses that are out there today with our tool set and how our tool set actually works. If I look at some of our customers very, very quickly from left to right, financial all the way through to healthcare, we have a broad breadth of customers, people like Barclays, Lego, Boohoo, Virgin Media and Vodafone, large organizations who are using our applications to provide this high level customer care to their customers. If I look at the tool set that supports all of this, just very, very quickly from a graphical perspective, in the middle of the screen, you've got the Egain customer engagement platform, which is made up of 4 components: the messaging hub, the historical view of the customer, giving agents that intelligence. So it's a 360-degree view. You've also got artificial intelligence and knowledge working together to support all the channels, as well as machine learning and analytics to help you continually improve the service that you're offering. In the gray area, that indicates all the different channels that we have, everything from website, the old traditional way of approaching customer service, right the way through to the telephony side and the IVR. Taking all of those multiple channels and bringing them directly into a single desktop, empowering your agents to work seamlessly across all the channels, irrespective of the one that they're focusing on right now. And then naturally, the blue line indicates that we've got a full integration to the different backends that you have already got in service today. Things like e-commerce, CRMs of the world, intranets, and bringing in the non-digital component with regard to contact centers, the telephony side, all into that single platform, underpinned by exactly the same knowledge, irrespective of the channel. And I think that's important to remember. One of the nice things is that although we talk about this quite a lot, we've got other companies and other organizations talking about our delivery to the customers and what they're seeing. Things like assuring the customer that they're able to get the information that they need through the digital first service increases your net promoter score by up to 20 points. You can improve your self-service for your customers to about 54% more than what you're doing today. Providing that customer with the faith and the understanding that they can come to you whenever they want to get that support. They don't necessarily have to wait for your opening hours. And I think it's an important factor to remember. The other side is that you can then empower your agents with the tool set, and you can see a change of FCR by up to about 21%. Your agent confidence grows because they're able to find the right information when they need it and when they want it. And using the platform, you're able to reduce your training time. You train your agents on how to use the tool set and let the knowledge and the system deliver information where they need it, when they need it. Because we're in the cloud, we're an agile business, which means we're going to innovate for you 2 times faster. It means when new things come in, because it's in the cloud, you get benefit of those so much quicker and so much easier. For yourselves, there's zero IT management as well. So from a management perspective, within your organization, it's removing that cost away by being in the cloud. And naturally, you can then optimize in real time. You can make sure things are moving quickly. They're organizing within your company to take advantage of everything that's new very, very quickly. With the streamlined technology that we have, it's secure, it's scalable, and it's in the cloud. We've got 24/7 monitoring, which means we invariably know that there may be an issue with your environment before something comes that you notice it. We've also got that concept of being easy to integrate to your other data backends because we're in the cloud. If your CRM's in the cloud, we're in the cloud, that integration layer becomes so much easier and so much quicker to be able to deliver. So that's all the technical side of what we're going to talk about. During the COVID pandemic, we actually decided we would run a customer survey of about 1,000 odd customers out there. Now, these aren't our customers, these are your customers. We're wanting to try and understand what the impact of COVID had on digital customer service. How did it change the face of things for customers? And was it for the good or was it for the bad? So we asked a couple of questions. One of the biggest things we thought of focusing on was this whole concept of how many people have increased using the digital customer service environment for the questions that they're asking. And you can see here that there's been an 80% increase in the number of successful usages for this. And I think, historically, people always, or customers always talked about, yes, we want to go digital. Yes, we've got digital in our plan. With COVID-19, we had no choice. We had to go digital. You had to move into that space of not having people in an office or not having people in a shop because of the situation of COVID. And I think that did jump up quite impressively, that whole concept of digital first, digital time and time again. So bearing that in mind, we thought we'd then look at the generations of who were actually using it more than others. And we did see an increase in the younger generations of using more and more digital effectively. Okay. And I think that is pretty key. We know that most of our younger generation are digital by design. They're part of that digital movement and they will do everything that they can digitally. But we saw them have an uplift in how much they were using it as well. So naturally, with that use, we then started to look at, was it positive or was it negative with regard to what was the change? Okay, and how did they feel about it? And again, same principle. More and more people are becoming positive about that digital engagement, that ability to do things themselves quicker when they want to, because of the situation. Yes, we were thrown into it. We had to do this, and it was by far a better option. So what's the choice? How do people actually communicate with an organization? So we asked this question as well. Which of the following endpoints did you rate your best satisfaction with? And right at the top was email, right at the bottom was chatbot. And everything else kind of like falls in the middle of that. And if you think about it, chatbots, especially pre and during the COVID timeframe, they were still very, very new, very, very shiny. People were still developing them, were figuring out how they work. And it was a case of that sometimes they didn't answer the questions at all, which is why you see such a low impact right now. The chatbots did not provide that high level of customer satisfaction. And that's going to change. The more and more people become able to use chatbots, be able to develop chatbots, and be able to make them do what they really want them to do, we will see that shift in how things are going. Bearing in this mind, with so many different channel options available, one of the questions we then asked was, okay, you may use multiple digital channels to talk to your vendors, but how often did you get different answers depending on the channel that you went? And there's 57% of the people that we spoke to said that yes, if they use a different channel, they did get different answers. And again, it's quite telling, because as we bring on more and more of the channels, we need to make sure that our knowledge is spread across those channels evenly. Everybody uses the same knowledge. A little later on, when we look at how we can actually do this, or how we do this, we'll start to talk around some of those features that enable you to use one knowledge across everything. So as we moved on with some of the questions that we asked, one of them we asked is, which of the industries do you feel provide a decent digital customer service? And right at the top, you'll see the bank or the credit unions right at the top there. And right at the bottom, it's the government agencies. And again, retail, including the online retail, is quite high at the top there, with everything else starting to fall down. And I think there's two reasons for this. One, the banks have been digital for quite some time. And again, forced into this situation, they needed to do things better. The government side of things, yes, we talk more and more about digitally first exercises that are going on, but because of the sudden appearance of COVID where everything had to be, it wasn't perhaps where it should have been. So bearing that in mind with the industry performing rankings, one of the next things we focused on is, well, what about customer satisfaction? Where did you see that change? Where did you see an uplift, and how? So you'll notice that on this particular slide, again, the government organizations were the one that dropped their customer satisfaction, because I couldn't walk into a government office to get support, or I couldn't walk into a council to get support because they were shut. I had to reach out on a phone. Phone was sometimes dragging its heels, and you can imagine the customer service that came about. If you look at some of the other ones, the retail and the healthcare, that's where we saw customer satisfaction remain the same or actually grow. They were used to working in this environment. And so as a result of that, they were quite readily available to adjust. Following on from that, so you've now got all these verticals that are going digital, but which ones of those gave you your preferred option? And I think, again, with the government, because their options are very limited, that wasn't as high as perhaps some of the other industries like retail, where they're grabbing hold of this whole digital channel and they're providing what their customers really need according to their choice, which gives you as a customer that freedom to decide which way we're actually going to approach an organization and how we're going to approach it. And again, we'll talk about some of those in a little time, and how different things can be achieved using the tool set very, very easily. Remember the question that we asked where we said there were 57% people who were getting different answers based on the channel that they chose. One of the biggest culprits were the healthcare and insurance industry, where you had siloed information, or you had agents who were working in siloed scenarios where they weren't necessarily able to make use of everybody's experience or everybody's knowledge to bring that information to the bed. And that was the one that stood out the most with regard to different answers for different channels. And it's key that as you bring more channels on, you try and standardize the answers that you're actually giving to ensure people are getting the same answer every single time, irrespective of how they did it. So we've spoken about who we are. We've told you a little bit about a survey that we did during the pandemic period to try and isolate what people were finding and how we can actually take that and progress it forward. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take you through a customer of ours who have done this both pre and during the pandemic and how they've actually grown and some of the benefits that they've seen with implementing the system and adding different channels through the time. But before I start that, just some things that you need to think about, especially when you start navigating this road or following this road, and highlight some of the things that you need to try and avoid. Benjamin Franklin quoted once that said, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. So think about what you're doing, make yourself a plan, but make it adaptable too. Avoid point solutions, silos, because it's when you have point solutions that you then start to have disparate knowledge systems, and each one may be having their own answer for a specific scenario. And it is very difficult to try and keep that aligned with each other. If you're going to develop something, or if you have developed something, make sure you take advantage of best practice consultation if you can get it. Ask other people how they're doing things, get guidance from this areas and understand what's happened. If you do take on a platform toolkit, make sure it's not just checkbox application functionality, but it's actual functionality that fits together, that works together hand in hand with everything else that you're trying to do. So today we're going to be looking at a company of ours called Trig Insurance. They've been using our application for a long time. And as we go through this, you'll see some of the stuff that they have done and the results that they've got. But just a little bit of background of who Trig Insurance are. It's one of the largest non-life insurance companies in the Nordic region, with activities across Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. They've got approximately 3,300 colleagues. Now, if you look at this from a COVID perspective, those 3,000 odd colleagues were in different locations. They were in buildings. And you can see just underneath that, they were in the east and west. They were in Oslo and they were in Bergen from a Norway country perspective. Now you imagine when COVID hit, those 3,300 colleagues all went to their own homes. So instead of having 2 offices, you've now got 3,000 offices that you've got to work with. Okay. And this is some of the difficulties that they started to have. The other thing to know is that currently Trig Insurance is the 3rd largest insurance company within Norway, and they've done quite a lot. If I highlight the journey very, very quickly, they joined Egain in 2015, launching their chat environment. And previous to that, they had everything running within Lotus Notes, their knowledge and their emails coming into Lotus Notes and being used by their colleagues to address customer queries and support customers on anything that they have. In 2015, they launched chat for customer service for private customers, and that was their beginning of their journey. In 2018, they started looking at, okay, how do we start to provide the right level of knowledge that people don't struggle to find things in other systems? Let's start to give them everything that we need. So they started on a small group of users first, but when that started, they'd also then expanded their use of chat across all their departments and not just for one department. In summer of 2019, just before COVID started to become a problem, they launched their knowledge base in full scale for all their private customers. And towards the end of 2019, they then shared knowledge base across the claims department as well. So you can see this general progression going forward. The end of 2019, That's when we hit with COVID, and you can see that they still launched email in 2020, right at the beginning, across all departments. Now, if you think about it, they started with chat, they rolled out knowledge, then they rolled out email. That knowledge base that they've had now in usage all through this time is available for everybody to use within the tool set. Okay, come 2021, they're starting to expand, and they're aiming to expand knowledge across more departments, as well as then expanding their omni-channel capability to handle voice, guided help, all of it available for the users. Now, you can imagine that this journey was hastened in 2020 because of the pandemic situation. So their chatbot is named Mia. She's available 24/7. She answers easy questions and general questions, navigating people around the website. So the whole idea was to have Mia answer the high volume, low complexity type questions so that they could then get the calls that are going into the call center agents that were the ones they really needed to focus on, which then gave the call center agents the time to deal with those type of questions that they really need to spend the time. From a knowledge-based perspective, this is what it used to look like. Agents had to know where to go and find information. There was no feedback capability. It was kind of like a single page of knowledge. Go back and find more if you need anything more about this topic. When they moved to the Egain environment, they produced a portal that looked like this: cleaner, easier to use, laid out in a fashion that is adaptable. You've got the ability to search if that's the way you like to get access to knowledge. You've got the ability to browse for knowledge. On the left-hand side, the topics. Or you can have single click to knowledge by using the popular articles on the right-hand side. So you really have this freedom to choose how you want to access knowledge from a user's perspective. If we then start to drill down and show you some of the functionality, bottom left-hand corner, where a user is typing a search, as they're typing search, the system prompts for some information, guides them maybe down specific articles that they're looking for or specific knowledge that they're looking for, saving time. In the middle of the screen, once I find what I wanted to look at and I click on it, it then presents me with that knowledge. But not only that, it gives me the ability to give feedback. It gives me the ability to save this knowledge article as something I want to use later, or I can share this with somebody. At the bottom, you'll see related articles, and that gives me that ability then to link other articles to this. So if there's more information or if there's additional information that they may be interested in seeing, very, very easy to access. If you look at that search results right at the top, we're bringing back snippets of information. So you can see whether this is something that you want to click on before you actually commit to view that article, giving the agents that ability to quickly discover what they're looking for at that point. Now, when COVID hit for Trig, the bottom green line shows where they were in 2019 from a number of calls coming in, pretty much sitting at just under 1,000. In 2020, because of the COVID situation, the red line gives you an increase in how they spiked the volume of calls that they were dealing with. Okay. Yes, it slowly started to come down as things started to even out and people were starting to look at it. But you will then notice that it is still almost 3 times as much as the volume was 3 times as much as what they were used to seeing. And I think that's key for what we look at next. Based on that, they had a goal of 75% or 75 for their customer satisfaction. They attained 73. So they were 2 points shy of what they were trying to achieve. Now you can imagine with that increase in number of calls coming in 3 times, they were still able to achieve a high customer satisfaction. Okay. Their agents were spread all across the organization. They brought part-time people in to cope with the amount of claims that were in during that summer timeframe. And I think that's important because of the flexibility of the tool, because of the ease of using of the tool. Agent training time comes down. The knowledge is available. The history of the customer is available. It gives you that capability of ensuring the information is there, easy to use, and you don't have to worry about not necessarily knowing everything about it. You can support what it is that you're doing. So if I look at it from a graphics perspective, what they saw using the Egain knowledge, using the environment, they're increasing their first call resolution, their agent satisfaction, and their customer satisfaction through this time, especially with that high jump. And that is just going to continue as they move forward. Now, as I take a look at the approach that was used to actually get this done and how it was done, so one of the things that as an organization you need to look at is connect with your customers across as many touch points as you can, touch points that they want to connect with you, okay, through that digital omni-channel, okay? It's that first time. Contextualize your customer journeys. By using a centralized knowledge base through the solve capabilities, you're able to ensure that it doesn't matter which channel a user comes in on, they're getting the right information all the time. Okay, single source of information, right answer. It also means that all your agents can effectively resolve all your contacts. And I think as we move out of the pandemic, where you have people coming back into offices slowly but surely, that's going to be key. Give the agents that freedom to work across everything. Naturally, because of this quick turnaround, you then can optimize through the learnings that are available in analytics. All right, the insights and the and accelerated product innovation brings you that capability to change things very, very quickly. You're working with your VA, monitor what your VA is doing, how it's doing, and change where needed, using autonomous orchestration through microloops. That whole capability of changing things very, very quickly and as easily as you can. Now, I've taken you through who we are as a company. I've taken you through the survey that we did, finding those areas where things are changing or things need to change. We then looked at one of our existing customers and how they started out and followed a journey to get where they are. And they're going to continue that journey post-pandemic, bringing in that freedom, that capability, and that ability to provide what the customers are looking for. So let's talk to you a little bit about how you can actually give this a try yourselves. Egain offers something called Innovation in 30 Days. It gives you the ability to actually try something, try knowledge, try chat, try VA. It takes 4 weeks, roughly speaking. 2 weeks are all about discovery and configuration. That's right at the beginning of the project. 2 weeks of operation, where we get you to work with some of your agents in the contact center, as well as some of your customers, to show how you can see the benefit of what it is that we're talking about personally yourself, and not having to rely on people's words or people's comments when they've tried it, but you can give it a try yourself. At the end of those 4 weeks, you can then make that decision. Do we continue with Egain, or do we leave Egain alone and maybe go look somewhere else? The most important thing is that there is no cost, there is no catch, and there is no commitment to move beyond the 4 weeks that we spend with you. What we do require is during those 4 weeks, you've got people who are helping us do this. You've got people we talk to from the discovery perspective. We'll go through the configuration and we'll work with the people we worked with to make sure that it is correct. Then during those 2 weeks of operation, we'll be working with your agents to help them get the best out of the system as they can in those 2 weeks and prove what it is that we are talking about. Now, if you're interested in this, there's several ways we can engage with you. The first one is that link at the bottom there. Go to egain.com, contact us, and get started with us. The other way is during the Q&A session, you might show some interest and we'll have one of our guys reach out to you post this session. Or conversely, after the session, you can always reach out to us as well through the platform, and we can engage with you to take you to the next step. Now, before I do end the session, I'd just like to say thank you very much for actually spending the time with me. Really appreciate it. And we're now going to go into a short question and answer session where, by all means, feel free. ask us any questions, and we will endeavor to answer you. If I don't get to everybody's answers or everybody's questions, we will spend some time afterwards answering your questions at a later stage. So for now, I'll hand you back over, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Steve. Really informative. Loads of content there within the presentation, and I know you and I have chatted before about these kind of things. So it's good to see you. I'm just going to work through a couple of the kind of questions I think would be good to pick up on. A few points that I've picked up on certainly as we were going through the slides. So customers, I guess, is all, as we are all customers, we know that when we contact organisations, we're really not very patient about the because of COVID response any longer. That's a given. We're 15 months in. We're expecting organisations to be much more controlled with these things, much more able to respond. But as customers, we also compare our local authority to our mobile provider, to our utility provider. We're not thinking about, oh well, I'm expecting a lower service because it's my local government, or I'm expecting a better service because it's my mobile provider. So we're measuring apples and oranges and pears and bananas, aren't we, as we go through. So I guess one of the things that I'd like to maybe pick up on, just based on what you were chatting about, is what would you suggest the quick wins for businesses who are perhaps maybe aren't performing as they'd like to at the minute? What would you suggest, some kind of things that we can pick up on quite quickly?
So some of the things that you can pick up quite quickly is to try and isolate or establish where those holes are in what you're doing. And a lot of the times it's giving that assurance to a customer of an event taking place. And I think especially during this period of time, somebody places an order, somebody does something or engages with you, go back and assure them continually, proactively, that something's going on. Because during pandemic, it kind of like went into a black hole. Because people weren't in an office, you never really were able to find out what the state of play was about an engagement that you had. And I think that is one of the quickest wins that you can actually put in place very, very quickly, very, very easily. It doesn't take loads amount of work, but what it does do, it does provide that assurance to customers that things are going in. That then will reduce the calls coming into the call center, which means you can then take the calls that are coming into the call center and deal with them in a better manner because you're not being inundated.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that communication is key, isn't it, across the piece with
Yes.
it. And again, as customers, we only want to be told, don't worry about it, we've got it in hand, regardless of whether it's your package delivery or you're moving house or whatever it is. You just want to feel that confidence in whoever you're dealing with, that they know what they're doing and they're keeping you informed along the way. For sure. And I think, you talked about Trig's tactics of starting small with what they were doing. And I know that was obviously over a period of a number of years and had to really turn a lot of that in its head as every organisation did, and responding to the pandemic. And they obviously worked through that as they were maturing. But for those organisations that are maybe a bit less mature in their self-service and automation journey, what would you be their advice to where should they start, maybe, if they're thinking? I mean, $1 million question. If you get this right, you've kind of won the lottery, haven't you? But
yeah, definitely.
Where should they start?
So I think it to be honest with you, it doesn't really matter where you start. The big thing is you've got to start. But equally, once you've started, you've got to be able to be adaptable to make things continually improve. So it's pointless starting out and then just letting it run its course. You've got to look at how you can measure, manage, and optimize. And those are the three things that you should always be doing, no matter where you start. Whether you start something really, really simply with regard to maybe putting a VA on a website to take the pressure off the call center. It's a case of make sure that that is behaving correctly. And a VA is a virtual assistant or a chatbot, something along those lines. Yeah. So the idea is, whatever you choose to start with, whether it's chat, whether it's a chatbot, whether it's knowledge within a contact center where you're standardizing your knowledge now, make your iterations small and sharp so that you're continually improving as you go through. Because the more we do that, it means that you're going to hit what the customers are looking for. And quite frankly, listen to what your customers are talking to you about. You know, the worst thing we can ever do is start out thinking this is what we're going to provide. We're going to give everybody SMS, but everybody's using WhatsApp, for example. So you've got to listen to what your customer wants as well, or how they want to approach you, and give them that flexibility. But then measure, manage, and optimize.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the analytics thing I think is quite critical in this. You mentioned that through some of your presentation, and I think I know from just even people that we're talking to that there is that, well, I guess review, shall we say, of measures that are in place that would have been traditional in any kind of customer service environment. But those were, well, one, we need to understand whether they were fit for purpose to begin with, and then secondly, need to think now that we're not in that physical space, are the measures, how we review the information that's there from customers, that insight, is it fit for purpose now? And, you know, how can businesses really better use the analytics to make the right decisions about how they respond to customers? What would your advice be there?
So if an organization is going to have a look at analytics, you need to look at it from a joined up process. You can't look at it in silos. And I'll keep coming back to this all the time, because if you look at any customer engagement, they will start with you on one channel and they will traverse the channels depending on what part of the journey they're actually in at that point in time. And it's important that if you are going to try and measure and manage that, you need to make sure that it's all available in a single analytical platform, because then it becomes easier to understand.
Yeah.
And the easier it becomes to understand, the greater things you can actually do with that knowledge, with that insight. I mean, the worst case scenario is if you think about a contact center agent, typically they don't necessarily have information on that entire customer from end to end, because if you're on a call and you say to an agent, you know, I sent an email yesterday, 9 times out of 10, the agent says, I haven't seen the email, because he doesn't deal with them.
Yeah.
You know, so when you look at it like that, it then means that even our reporting structure needs to be linked as well.
Definitely.
To ensure that you can measure right across everything.
No, that makes sense. And I think, you know, I think it is something that people are working through, is to understand whether, you know, what they're measuring just now are the right measures. And you're right, because, you know, people are more remote, but they're not able to just chat to somebody next to them and ask them the question and say, you know, if they've missed something, or how do they get to, you know, access those things, that information that they would have quite easily have done before.
Very, very much so. And I think, you know, when we were all sitting in one office, we had our colleagues right next door to us. If we had a sticky situation, we could ask for help and support. That no longer happens anymore. Yes, we've got teams in the background, but it is in the background, you know, and trying to work out how we share that information so much quicker and so much easier. Yeah,
definitely. I'm going to there's a quick polling question I want to put out to attendees today, just to give us a flavour for, you know, what people are looking at on this kind of piece. So I'm going to just launch this, just bear with me. So, you know, we've talked about customers, some reports are saying they're no longer accepting COVID as an excuse for limited or poor service. So, you know, from those attending today, in your opinion, is your organisation meeting customer service expectations? Because I think, you know, we all understand from our own organisation's point of view, you know, some of the challenges that are there and the challenges that we're trying to overcome. So we'll let that run just for a few seconds, Steve, and then we can maybe have a quick chat around the results. And I've got a couple other questions to work through, but we've still got a wee bit of time, so plenty of time to do that. But it's a challenge, isn't it? And we can't just accept it, and some people are still using that quite readily as an excuse for businesses. And
they are. It's always that fallback. Oh, well, we can't do this because we don't have enough staff anymore. And I think, or we can't get access to the staff quickly enough. I think that needs to stop what we're doing right now, because, you know, yes, right at the beginning of pandemic, that was sound, because while you're trying to put things in place and all of that jazz, but now theoretically you should have put it in place. Now you need to make sure that everything keeps moving forward from here onwards.
Yeah, absolutely. So just very kind of, I mean, these are quite kind of short and sharp and to the point responses, but, you know, we can see the report suggests, you know, 56% are saying that they are meeting customer expectations. And then interestingly, 31% are saying just some of the time. So, that's quite an interesting piece there. So clearly everyone's still a bit of a work in progress in that regard. But yeah, interesting nonetheless. Okay, we've got time for still another couple of questions. So I'm just going to work through what we've got here, Steve. So one of the things I think is quite interesting, given that we've had people moving from a physical environment to everyone being much more remote and using any staff to respond to customer service that wouldn't traditionally have been in a kind of customer contact environment. So, have you seen any instance of people that you work with in redeploying idle employees, idle in inverted commas, I guess, because I'm sure they're not idle. If you're working in a branch, you can't help the fact that you work in the branch and not the contact centre, and you work in the store and not the contact centre. So, where have you seen kind of good redeployment of that kind of resource?
You're 100% correct there, because that idle term is literally, I can't do the job that I used to do anymore, or what else can I do, kind of idle. And I think that, we've seen that a lot of times when you have had groups of people who are focused on one particular thing because of a change in behavior, whether it's a customer behavior or whether it's the business behavior. You can effectively take those people and retrain them. Now, one of the things that Egain allows that capability of actually making sure that all people who are using the system are able to answer the questions. I remember some time back, we even had a CEO who actually went onto the floor, picked up a call, and was able to deliver a high level of support because he's got all the tool set available to you. Yeah. And Trig did that very, very effectively. They're still doing it very, very effectively, except that now they're focusing also on, at peak times, being able to bring people on board. You've got the structure in place. You've got the knowledge, which is not siloed, and you've got the business information around your customer all joined up, which means when somebody comes on board to help, who's not necessarily a contact center agent, they're able to utilize the tools and find a way to answer the customers, but with a position of intelligence. They've got the right knowledge. They don't have to worry about that anymore. They've got information about this customer co-joined with back-end systems, and they've got history around what this customer has done, whether it be past calls or past activities, or whether it be purchasing stuff that they've done. So that brings all of that together, and the more you have it joined, the easier it becomes to deploy people very, very quickly.
Yeah, and again, I think we've all had that experience, haven't we? Whether we've been in a store and they're saying, "Well, actually, I can't help you. You need to phone the contact center," or vice versa, or it's a branch.
Correct.
There's definitely been some good examples of people being quite smart with even using their kind of, I guess, the real estate that they've had available. So whilst they maybe couldn't have had people physically coming in, if they're, they've maybe altered the hours of the kind of branch opening hours, but using maybe other space that they had to respond to customer service inquiries that come in, phone or whatever other kind of channels.
Very much so.
There's definitely some good examples of that. I guess another thing that people tackle as a kind of ongoing problem is that securing investment. How getting budget to make these changes is always a challenge. And I guess we've had a bit of a good opportunity over the last wee while to maybe fast track some of those decisions that would have maybe taken a bit longer. So, how do you continue the investment and interest and engagement once we get past COVID? Once we get past this point in time that we feel we're all kind of stuck in just now. How do we keep people interested in investing in customer service? I guess is the critical question.
That's always the $1 million question, right? Because customer service is seen as that cost drain on an organization. I think one of the big things is that we've proven during the pandemic that even though we might not have a full present system where everybody is present in the one thing, being online, you can still achieve the same type of success. Going digitally means that you can then start to look at places where you can actually reduce costs. And it's just a case of literally finding those points and working with them very successfully. we've had 18 months of data gathering with regard to what customers have successfully done digitally and what customers have struggled to do digitally.
Yeah.
And I think it's at that point in time that you need to look at that, take that, glean from it, and use that to drive that investment going forward. Plus, I think the other thing is that as technology becomes smarter, because technology is always changing. You know, when we started going digital, I don't know, several years ago, WhatsApp, Apple Business Chat weren't even thought of from a customer service perspective. But as more and more people take them on board, they want that opportunity.
Yep.
And it's it's listening to your customers and providing your customers with the service in the areas that they really need it. They want to choose the channel. They don't want you to dictate the channel.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I think we're all pretty keen to a lot of the time also to do what we can on our own without necessarily having assisted service in any shape or form. But I suppose even in a digital environment, there's an opportunity for help if you need it, and it's that kind of co-browsing piece as well. So you know, what would you suggest is kind of good options around that, Steve?
So just expanding on from that a little bit more, I think, is the fact that, you know, if you think why people go and physically talk to somebody, why you go into a bank and talk to a bank manager, or why do you go and buy something from a store, a lot of it is down to that physical presence capability. Now, being online, one of the things that we used to do very, very badly, and when I talk about we, I talk about customers as well as vendors, is that we don't have that means to actually complete something very, very quickly, or complete a transaction very, very quickly, or the transaction is complex. So by bringing in co-browse, you're actually able to get an improvement with regard to how quickly people can actually finish. Now, the scary thing is, co-browse is not about sharing your laptop. Co-browse is about sharing your screen. And there's a big difference. I know it might sound semantical, but in reality, showing somebody what you're doing versus letting them have access to your laptop is a huge different thing. And by showing somebody what you're doing, it means you're able to complete that so much quicker, so much easier. And providing customers with the ability to say, I don't want to do this anymore. Thanks for your help. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
You know, it gives you that capability to do short, sharp helping of a customer to get them over that final hurdle. It's like the old adage about the going online and doing shopping and going to the shopping basket, and it's too difficult for me to close my shopping. So what do? I leave it in the shopping basket, and that sale never gets made because I forget about it or whatever the case is. So by being able then to say, okay, before you go, do you need some help? Yeah. Let's co-browse, let's help you sign this. It's that, and that's where we turn cost into a benefit, basically, or into a income stream.
Yeah.
And I think we'll see more and more people using co-browse to assist them to change the income stream.
And again, you know, as we all, you know, work and live more in this kind of digital way as we're doing today, you know, we would normally be in a nice conference room somewhere, but we're not. We're still making the most of the opportunity and still connecting. But we're all used to that, aren't we? Of, you know, screen sharing and things like that. So it's becoming much more of a kind of normal behaviour. So you know, I'm sure we'll see more of that.
I think that there has been this big jump from not doing everything digitally, but now we're being forced to do digitally. You are still going to find that there are people who still want to go shopping inside the touchy-feely type shop.
Yeah.
But you're still going to find more and more people saying, well, why can't I do that? Why can't you show me what I'm doing?
Absolutely.
And I think that will, you know, it'll come more and more and more.
Definitely. Well, it's been great to talk to you today, Steve. Thank you so much for preparing the presentation and it's been good to chat through our series of questions. So really appreciate you bringing your wisdom to us for the day. So just before we kick off, we're going to have a short break before our next session, which will kick off at 3 o'clock. So in the meantime, if there's any other questions you have, I'm sure Steve will be happy to take them offline. If there's anything you want to get in touch with about, then please do so. But for now, I'm going to just take us to a break, and we'll see you again just in about 10 minutes or so. So thanks again, Steve.
Thanks,
See you soon. Take care.
Fantastic, and welcome to our third session this afternoon. So this is all about transforming your customer service with journey mapping and orchestration. So we'll talk to you more about with a brilliant case study and talk to you more about that and learn a lot more from British Gas and from Quadient. So before we do that, I think just an introduction really from myself. I'm Nicola Collister from Custarian. We're a change and business transformation practitioners. And whilst we might not be able to predict the future, it is easy to see that customer service operations in 2022 are going to look far different to what they looked certainly in 2019. And we've heard lots of stories, you know, of the seismic shifts that operations had to make once COVID and lockdown first happened. So, you know, many stories, certainly we've heard this afternoon around, you know, work from anywhere, but also about the customer experience and the customer journey changes. So, you know, huge shifts to digitization, huge shifts to having to think about really how can, you know, your customers access various services. So we'll see, you know, that continue now. And as I say, you know, it will look very different in 2022 and beyond. For the foreseeable future, though, it is full of likely challenges. You know, customers are continuing to shift their channel preferences. You know, again, recent surveys of customers have said that they're likely to stick, highly likely to stick. I think it was something like 70% with the channels that they've become more familiar with. But equally, we are starting to see customers go back to other channels, you know, as stores and things like that have started to open. You know, we've almost craved some of that physical interaction. So, you know, some things will shift back, but equally some channel shifts will stay. But also, you know, product teams now are reacting to dynamics. You know, looking at what regulators are doing, altering laws, you know, equally driving more focus on customer experience. A lot of the regulators, you know, certainly across utilities and through public sector businesses, you know, regulators are driving, you know, more focus on customer experience and innovation and, you know, certainly putting yourselves in the shoes of customers. But the challenges also around employee turnover. So, you know, again, we've heard talks around, are we going to start to see, you know, an increase in almost the great resignation? So, you know, as particularly people are becoming burnt out, you know, dealing with problems and challenges all day, are we going to start to see, again, some increases in attrition and changes in the contact centre workforce? Journey mapping is a common feature now in most businesses. Whether it's B2C, B2B, private sector, public sector, you know, it's something that, you know, lots of organisations talk about. However, you know, is it one of those things where, you know, in some cases journey maps have been completed, but they've stayed fairly static, a little bit like process maps? You know, we've all heard the stories where, you know, businesses will say, yes, we've done the process mapping. It was done a couple of years ago and it's sat in a drawer and we've not updated it. So, you know, we whip it out occasionally and have a look at what we should be doing. You know, customer journey maps in some cases have, you know, fallen foul of similar to some process maps in organisations. But the other challenges are that, again, there has been a huge focus on digital, I think particularly through COVID. And we've got to not forget that not everything can be done digitally, and not every customer wants to do things digitally, and not every scenario or interaction is right for digital. So it's important not to forget those other interactions when you're looking at your customer journey maps. And I know, you know, certainly recently, and I won't say which financial service organisation it was, but certainly in interacting with my bank recently, the app's brilliant. But actually, where there was a process where I needed to change something, they then had to send me a link to a form, and that is where it just all fell down completely. It was an absolute nightmare to get this form completed and back to them and so on. So it's almost though they'd forgotten about, you know, the other side of the journey because there'd been so much focus on the app. As I say, the app was brilliant. I think finally, it's let's not forget about vulnerable customers. You know, there's lots of customers still, you know, citizens out there across the world, but, you know, certainly across the UK who haven't got access to digital means or digital services, or for whatever reason, actually, it's not right for them. So, you know, they could be hard of sight. They could be, you know, hugely dyslexic and so on. So we've got to remember there's lots of vulnerable customers out there, and how do we, you know, provide a brilliant experience to those customers. So all of this now, I think, certainly again, what we've gone through in the last sort of, you know, the last year or so, has driven a huge focus on customer experience and journey mapping, and how you orchestrate that experience end to end. So this session, without further ado, I'm going to hand over first to Scott. And Scott, welcome, Scott Drager. You're the VP of Digital Transformation for Quadient. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, by the way. I'm sure you'll correct me shortly if I'm not. So yeah, over to you, Scott, and look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Nicola. And I have the pleasure of having an amazing discussion with Adam Furbank, who is a transformation lead at British Gas. So he took not just British Gas, the larger Centrica organization as well. So what we're going to talk about for the duration of the hour is how customer empathy, customer journey mapping, customer communications all intersect in ways that allow the contact center people of today to start acting like the contact center people of 2025 and beyond. So I'm super excited to welcome Adam Furbank. And we chat sometimes. We'll talk on Twitter. You can check us on LinkedIn. We have a lot of engagement back and forth. But Adam, before we do like a quick intro, Adam is a leader in customer empathy because he started a program at British Gas that went way before the pandemic. So what we can have today, and we hopefully will get some questions from you in the audience, is he has a pre-pandemic baseline customer journey map. So he is in a unique spot to compare now to before pandemic, post-pandemic, during pandemic, so he can understand some of these differences. So if you haven't been advanced on the customer journey discipline, listening to him, you will be able to ask some questions about what's different before, during, and after the pandemic that you may not know or be able to get in your own organization.
Yeah, brilliant. And Scott, just to add, as you say, sorry, I might have forgotten to say at the start, if anyone's got any questions, look, we want to make this as interactive and informative as possible. If anyone's got any questions, do pop them in the panel, in your chat function. And as we're going through, I hope Scott and Adam, you don't mind if I do get some questions coming through, I will just interject if you don't mind, and then just sort of pose those questions as we're going through. Because I think, as you say, we're going to have a, you know, hopefully a fun next 50 minutes, and I believe no slides. So you're going to do this very, very informative.
We have a plan, though. It's okay.
Okay, fantastic. Adam, over to you. Adam, do you want to give yourself, just give the audience a quick introduction then, just leading on from the fabulous introduction that Scott's just given you?
Absolutely. I'm not sure I can even top that. So thank you, Scott, for that fantastic introduction. My name's Adam Ferbank. I am the journey practice lead for customer communications across British Gas. Been marketing for over 25 years. So having to adapt with the times and go with the kind of ever evolving and ever changing customer needs and customer experience that now forms a huge part of marketing. I've been very kind of blessed to be in that position and bring my kind of expertise to help British Gas kind of refocus what they were doing.
Fantastic, thanks, Adam. So over to you, Scott. I think you're going to kick off the questions.
Yeah. So the first thing in the intro, I mentioned that you're a leader in customer empathy. Now, well before the pandemic, your team over at British Gas developed a competency in customer journey mapping. What made you start down that path of developing that skill for British Gas?
Yeah, I mean, we were part of a large digital transformation program. This is kind of 3 or 4 years ago. We knew our website was starting to get out of date. It was built on an older technology platform, and same with our app. So we needed to radically transform those to start to bring people into a digital first agenda and a digital first kind of journey approach. And whilst doing that, what we found was that we had no record of how offline communications interacted with these new self-serving online journeys. And we started to collect and amass all these different routes and all these communications, how they fitted together, what was triggering them, and customer volumes, etc. But we had no way of storing that. So probably about 3 years ago, I started kind of looking at what can we use, how can we map all of our journeys, and came across Quadient. Quadient was doing some work with us already, but they had a fantastic kind of journey mapping capability. And so we started in earnest kind of mapping all our journeys across all channels, not just kind of traditional letters and emails, but how customers were interacting with us on the website, the app, where that was then triggering off comms, and how a customer traversed through all those different channels. They're never going to operate in just in one channel. So that started, and we kind of started that and got a baseline of maps done probably a couple of years before the pandemic hit, really.
Yeah, that gives you an incredible lead, because you're one of the few organizations that can compare pre and post pandemic. Now, I know you've been working on this for a while, so what customer experiences have improved based on some of the learnings? What are some of the, maybe the things that you saw in your first map that just scared you that you fixed?
We went through an entire kind of organizational redesign as well as this, because we started identifying core journeys a customer went on. We realized we were kind of divided ourselves up in terms of verticals, in terms of channels and processes, our business processes, which meant we did a lot of passing over the fence to our teams, and we did a lot of doing business with ourselves, if you know what I mean, to get the right customer outcome for us, which was hugely inefficient. So one of the big things that we did just prior to kind of the lockdown starting was we went through a huge organizational restructure. But because we had all those journey maps done, when we were then started to lock down, we started standing up call centers at home and allowing customers to that. Plus, we had a very reduced service that we could offer because we weren't allowed into people's homes if it wasn't an emergency with lockdown. We were able to kind of suddenly start to tweak and amend our journeys to work within this new environment of most people working from home, having reduced services. But as we were starting to build up the real digital journeys, what we were starting to find is we needed to, in the pandemic, there are certain things that were becoming quite emotive. We were able to identify really key emotive journeys, and we really started to have a look at how can we still humanize some of the digital experiences and the digital journeys that we'd created, because debts were starting to increase. We've got kind of higher probate rates, things like that. And you don't want to deal with a chat bot or web chat or try and do things online. You want to speak to somebody. So to kind of, because we understood the journeys, we were able to free up kind of call center agents' times and put them on the more emotive journeys where somebody really needed to speak to somebody. And that's what really kind of helped us through. We still pushed everybody as far as we could down a self-serving journey if it was for very simple, easy to do tasks. But where we needed to have that human interaction, we were able to kind of slightly tweak the processes a bit and provide that human element to some of those kind of highly emotive journeys. One of the other things that kind of I'll just pick up on that we learned as well that Nicola kind of highlighted was about vulnerability. What we were starting to find was we're getting quite a few comments through as we got the digital journeys set up, was some of our customers weren't able to contact us. And so we basically developed a new data flag within our data sets, just entitled digital vulnerability, where we didn't have an email address and we didn't have a mobile number for somebody. We could pull that data set out, and we then communicated with that kind of subset, and we gave them a dedicated phone number to call us in on. So it kind of really helped those out. We want to still be able to serve, and if they were having trouble getting through to us, that was kind of a really a difficult thing for them to do. We wanted to kind of be there for all of our customers.
Yeah, that's an important change to understand, that not everybody's pace to digitalization is the same, and some people just refuse to go on the journey, and they don't need to. Now, one of the things that we look at usually in the contact center, a lot of times the contacts, the calls wind up with the communication coming out at the outside. That's one of the things that Quadient always looks at, is we started from a communication centric method, but you have been improving employee experiences in the contact center. Have you been writing scripts or updating that connection between the communications and the scripts in a way that improves the employee experience over at British Gas?
No, absolutely. That's been one of our key findings that we've done as part of this reorganisation, or what we've called it is reimagining British Gas to be a new kind of forward-thinking organisation. And we've really coined a phrase which is about being customer obsessed and solutions led, which sounds kind of quite far-fetched, but everything we've been doing in terms of building journeys specific to customer needs, where we'd come from previously was to have our business processes dominate or dictate what customers could receive and think from us. We've turned that on its head and gone, right, what does a customer actually need? Really getting to understand where they are. But because we'd kind of mapped everything, we could then overlay what our business processes were that we'd started to change to meet the customer needs. But one of the things that kind of started to come out was, although kind of NPS was quite good and journey kind of NPS was quite good on the journey, there was quite a few stumbling blocks in terms of our business processes. And so by talking to all of our employees, we started to build up what the employee experience was. So I mean, it makes absolute sense. If an employee is happy or finding it really hard to do a certain task or to help a certain customer because the process is a bit out of date, is long-winded, it's not efficient, it's extra time that's being taken, that frustration that the agents can have with the internal business process subconsciously kind of rubs off onto how they're speaking and how they're interacting with the customer. So increasing customer employee experience had an absolute brilliant effect on overall customer experience as well.
If you have a customer on the other end of the communication channel, whatever it is, whether it's phone or a chat channel, and you have to go between 4 or 5 systems, that frustration, those alt tabs kind of come out of your voice and go into the communication and definitely hurt the brand value. So you mentioned you're customer obsessed. Is there a moment where you realized it worked and it went from an idea or a plan to this is our DNA now?
Yeah, I mean, we've started to really see our NPS scores start to improve. And that's not just the only metric that we look at. We look at kind of cost to serve, how many steps the customer's taking, the speed they're on the journey. We look at failure demand, where customers are dropping out of the digital journey and having to come back to us. I think that what one of the speakers talked about that before is in terms of empty shopping baskets and things like that, and abandonment rates. By mapping everything, we were able to see, and by adding live volumetric data to how many communications were coming out, we were able to analyze if the communication was working well enough, because if the call to action that was in the piece of communication wasn't being picked up or done by the customer, we would then have to send additional communications out to remind them and things like that. So that increased our cost to serve, increased the length of the journey, and things. So that was one of the really big lessons that we got out of is get the maps done, link it to kind of some of your key metrics, but have a really clear goal as to what you want that journey to be. Make sure you've got journey goals, and based on strategic needs of that customer, make sure you meet those, and then you form your business processes kind of around that. And that's how we changed things. We've probably made more business improvements than we have done by understanding the customer journey. We cut out a lot of waste. We were over communicating with our customers in some areas and not communicating with them in other areas. So they needed that reassurance piece, and seeing these gaps or kind of bunches of communications meant we could kind of easily kind of manipulate the journey to give the customer the right communication at the right time with the right level of information that they needed to create that reassurance, and give them that need. And that also meant kind of looking at different channels. Rather than just some of the traditional email and letter, we started to have a look at kind of WhatsApp as people are getting used to kind of operating in that world. We're looking at Facebook Messenger. We're sending more two-way asynchronous kind of SMS messages out to people because we're on the move and we've been locked down, but we are generally a nation that is on the move and doing things. So we've got to think differently as marketers and communicators as to how we reach our audience.
I want to pull something out of there that to expand on it a little bit. You mentioned that you're doing the asynchronous channels, you're doing some WhatsApp, you're doing some Facebook Messenger, some asynchronous SMS messages. One of the things that you notice, I know from talking about your journey mapping approach, is obviously the customer journey is on the top, but then below that you have the process, swim lanes, and then below that there's kind of those IT subsystems. And oftentimes those are significant barriers to doing good cross-channel communication. And British Gas customers have a variety of channels through which they can engage. One of the things that I wanted to highlight to the contact center audience is that underneath the communication are a lot of different systems that are often not coordinated. It's important to have those systems coordinated so your customer voice can execute consistently across those channels. Because if you have a WhatsApp team in one part of the basement, and then a Facebook message team somewhere else, and then an email team, they're all writing copy in a slightly different way. They're writing scripts that send a subtly different message. How have you addressed that over at British Gas?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned before, we used to work in silos and those verticals, look at different channels. We've reorganized and redefined how we work together. And rather than having teams, we have kind of matrix teams. So we've just recently introduced kind of journey and UX copywriters into the phone. They sit within an individual journey team with process owners, with systems architects, with kind of comms designers, with UX designers, with CX kind of service designers, all work together on a solution and look at it from an end-to-end perspective that the customer goes on. So you don't get that kind of mismatch of different tones, things. We're now starting to create a good look and feel channels for that journey. So it doesn't matter which channel you use, the customer should start to now feel whether you're on the website, the communications that come off the website, or then you call in and you speak to an agent and they've got some scripts that they go through, or use one of our IVR channels. It should all now start to look, feel and sound the same, like a unified British Gas.
So that's an interesting approach, because I know almost everybody in this audience has taken a call where they're getting the brunt of customer dissatisfaction because something that they have in their hand or on their screen mismatches. And you have the headset on, you have the headset hair. I have headset hair today. You have that, and somebody's just upset because there's a mismatch, and it's the people on the other end, the contact center people, that have to absorb that. So at British Gas, you've done a lot to manage that journey. So you've delivered that consistency to avoid that problem, because not only is that problem uncomfortable for the customer, it's also one of the more expensive interactions. I guess at British Gas, one of a call center interaction is expensive, but not nearly as expensive as an unnecessary sending out a truck to somebody's house. That's probably the most expensive mistake. And you could have somebody in the contact center might say, the only way to make this customer calm down is to promise them a truck that they may not need.
Absolutely. We've started to use kind of different conversational techniques, and we have our engineers answering calls as well. They can talk customers through some of the more simple things. We've created YouTube videos and self-help videos for some of the more common problems, like your pilot light goes out on your boiler. It's a pretty standard, anybody can do that. You don't have to kind of get in, and more often than not, to help us diagnose those, we've started to bring in the engineers onto some of the calls, and they've been really key in looking at our virtual engineer program, where we're starting to look at how do we do things via video call, holding your phone up to the boiler so the engineer can see what's happening, and then we can decide whether we need to go out, whether it is an emergency, and also upskilling and training our kind of call center agents to listen out for certain things kind of in the background, or the language that's being used, to look for vulnerabilities, to help them prioritize what and who needs to go out, particularly over the pandemic period. It's been quite a challenge, but I think we've kind of ridden that well, because we were organized and we were mapped, and we knew what to do and when.
Now, one of the things I want to kind of switch, we want to scare the audience a little bit. You know, this is hopefully we'll get a question during this period. So Nicola, keep the audience honest on here. Now, the session description that Nicola read referenced the Great Resignation. Some people call it the talent tsunami. There's a pent-up demand. I'm definitely reading more of the U.S. press about this, not so much of the UK stuff just yet, because I don't know which sources to go to. But what this what this concept is pent-up demand for job switching during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I want you to pause for a second. Everybody in the audience, just kind of pause and think about a 25 to 45% turnover in your call center, because sources say between 25% and some as high as 55, 60% say that this amount of people want to change jobs. So imagine a 25 to 45% turnover in your call center, your contact center. How is your infrastructure prepared for this one? So we'll add them while we wait for an audience question. How is your infrastructure prepared for the Great Resignation?
Yeah, I mean, there's within the UK, there's talks of kind of the hospitality industry having to increase wages by 20%, to get people back into kind of serving roles and things, which, you know, if you've been stuck at home as a call center agent as well, you might find that you want to get out and start interacting again. So what we've tried to have a look at, and we through our kind of employee experience program and all the training that we've been putting in place, it's about kind of creating that value that you have and to retain kind of best people. So we're multi-skilling them up to deal with things. I mean, I think one of the biggest kind of things that we've learned from kind of all of this, and I think we were on the track anyway. I just think kind of the lockdown forced us to kind of operate a little bit differently and to expedite kind of what we were doing. It was to try and look at a lot of the kind of call center targets and things aren't related to doing the right thing for the customer and about creating that customer experience. There are kind of KPIs on length of call, whether you've kind of stuck to script. There's upsell and cross sell, and an agent is expected to try and get all of that in, which is not necessarily answering what the customer wants. And there's time limits, and so they kind of push them on to the next agent. You can get passed from agent to agent who do different things and all have different KPIs, none of which relate to kind of the customer experience. So we've kind of started to have a look at that and address that and incentivize and empower the people to our call center agents to deal with the problem or the one customer at a time, to spend a little bit longer on that call. If it stops that customer having to call back, if they stop getting moved from person to person, yes, it might be initially a longer call, but overall, the overall experience has improved. It's resolved at the first time. It's a greater experience for the customer. It's a greater employee experience because it's the customer's happy. And so all that starts to kind of escalate into a really great customer experience.
So if somebody is expecting, sorry.
So I was just going to say, ultimately, it costs less as well. I think you referred to, Adam, you know, in terms of reducing cost to serve. So.
Indeed.
From an employee experience, if you are going to expect a 25 to 45% turnover, there's a couple of important things to think about. If you're going to have high turnover, you're going to have to recruit new people. How quickly can they kind of join into the system? If your system is difficult to operate, and let's say you have to go one place to send an SMS, move over to a different screen for an email confirmation, or another screen to manage multiple chats at the same time. Is your system conducive to training and onboarding new employees? Because if it's complex below the waterline of customer experience, where you may have it all sorted above with a great customer journey map, you have good processes, but below the line, if you're making your below the waterline, if you're making people all tab switch between applications too much, it may be too difficult to onboard new people, or they may not stay, or they may not wash through, they may not survive a probationary period. How would you suggest people build their systems so that the employee experience is front of mind?
We've spent a lot of time on this, and I won't take credit for it because it's not kind of my area, but we've basically been spending a lot of time looking at that employee experience and what our agents have to go through. And like you said, the number of different screens. For a new agent to come on board, there was an initial induction of 2 to 3 weeks before they were allowed to even start answering calls to get through all our processes, understand all the different screens and things. We basically built a bot called Cosmo that is both forward facing to the customer to help them traverse some of the kind of digital journeys, but it's also agent facing as well, and it listens to the call and it prompts the next screen. And to save an agent typing out an address, if it'll hear it through natural language selection, it will pre-populate a lot of screens. It will then prompt the next question to come up. So an agent, we've now kind of got training down to about 4 to 5 days before that can get on there, all through this prompted kind of bot that we've created that sits in the background, helping agents out, reminding them of the next thing, listening to what the customer's actually saying, and helping direct that conversation by pulling up the right screens, auto-populating, auto-filling out some of the forms and things. Because the customer might phone in to change the direct debit details, but then they might also know if interest has changed as well. So then an agent, rather than having to pull all those different things up, it automatically starts to do all that for them, starts to pre-populate and prompt them for the next question or what to ask the customer next. So that has really helped. And I speaking to some of the kind of call center agents, I think it's absolutely fantastic. And that, if there is the Great Resignation, or and we have a lot of people moving and moving, we are built to get people into and up to speed, trained, and be able to operate and fulfill customer requirements a lot quicker. Now we've done all that. I say we were doing that as part of our overall transformation. We just expedited it and pushed that through a little bit quicker during the lockdown, because we knew that was vital for helping customers deliver properly.
So it sounds like you have the two proper defenses. One, a great employee experience in place to retain those employees, so the great resignation minimally impacts you, and then also a great onboarding experience to bring people in as it does. One of the things we want to just kind of think about, this would be a place where if I could look through the camera and see you, I would ask you to raise hands. Who's been in their position for more than 10 years? So if you've been in one of these positions for like more than 10 years, think about, maybe complexity has been added like a little bit at a time. You had, print, email, SMS channels. Then there were some of the chat channels came up. Then, a few more screens. But it's very easy to learn 1 or 2 new screens every few months for a decade. But if you think about these new people, they have to learn all of it at once. And if you take Adam's story, getting that training from 2 to 3 weeks before the first call down to 4 days is a huge impact for the employees, but also the clients, because the clients can detect that, or the customers can detect that that positivity and that control over the subject matter. What Adam described is really turbocharging all of the contact center agents. So I had a question about, you do have that proper baseline since you started before the pandemic. Now you successfully tweaked some of the journeys. I know one of the things we've talked about before is you had some of those very emotive journeys. How quickly did you turn some of those noticing a problem into new interactions for your call center?
Quite quickly, actually, because how we've set up. I think I mentioned we started working matrix teams. We started using agile methodologies to do that. So we were running quite high intense sprint, 2-week sprint. So identifying a problem and getting a MVP solution out there to satisfy most customers, we were turning around in a couple of weeks. We would then kind of finesse and build on that, but to get something out there was really quick for us. It was kind of, we needed the technology in place. We needed to have everything mapped. We needed to be able to study and read those maps and look where failure demand was happening, or where there was issues, or listen to what our customers were saying or employers were saying. And then we will build that into a backlog, get it into a sprint, and work across these 6 new teams. We created multidisciplinary teams that work together to solve that problem. And like I said, the technology was a great enabler for us to do that.
So a lot of people think of journey mapping as a a few day workshop where things are, you know, real or virtual. Imagine like Post-its on a wall, maybe some things, some documents taped up to the wall. What's your vision? What's your understanding of a customer journey map, since you're very advanced? And when is that map done?
In a word, it's never done. It should always be evolving. Customers' needs continually evolve. There was a need to kind of get people online, to get people kind of talking as we went into lockdown, to bring them up to speed on kind of how to interact with us digitally. So there's a lot of work done on that. As we're now starting to emerge, because we've kind of gone through and taken that time and listened to them, we know customers, I think Nicola alluded to it kind of earlier, that within retail, they want to interact with a store and a person. It's going to be kind of the same with how they want to interact with us, but we're trying to kind of really understand that there is a bit of digital fatigue that is out there, kind of in the marketplace. Everyone has been forced to operate online and use bots and web chat, etc. You know, we just run a kind of a little campaign to send customers a very dedicated, very bespoke and personalised piece of mail with our offering. This is the first time that we've had a mail response outperform an email response. I think people were just wanted something different. I do think print is an essential part of the overall marketing mix, but it's understanding where and when and how to use that. And I think a lot of people just jump on what the latest technology is, what AI, need an app, do all that kind of thing. It's understand your customer first, and then plan the right technology that delivers the benefit for the customer and obviously the business as well.
Now, the next thing I want to ask, I want to just give you a warning, to a polite reminder, Adam, to not name names here. But I imagine as you were going through this process, there were probably some naysayers for the audience and everybody here in the CCA world. What were those naysayers who like maybe didn't believe in journey mapping as an improvement discipline? Where did they come from, and what were some of their objections that you had to move through?
Yeah, no, there was a few. It took a while to kind of get this on board. We'd had journeys before, but there were more internal business processes that we were calling journeys, weren't really journeys. So bringing that old kind of lexicon back up of journeys, I had to kind of convince them that customer journey mapping was different, and I had to kind of bury myself away and do a lot of kind of digging in the background and basically produce a map for them to start to show them how everything started to hang together. I mean, the maps included kind of all the website journeys, all the app journeys, what the comms were off the back of those, how call center agents interacted and triggered communications. We then put volumetric data against those so we could start to see how customers moved from channel to channel, where they were flowing, whether they dropped out of the digital channel and came onto telephony, etc., etc. Excuse me. What we're also able to do then is to kind of overlay that with customer insight and data and some NPS scores. So it really started to bring the map to life and make it really, really powerful. And when I first put one up on the wall, people just couldn't believe the level of detail, but how simply it was laid out, how they could then drill down into those different processes, those different communications, have a look at those, could comment on them and make changes. So it's an ever evolving thing. And you mentioned about Post-it pads on the wall. We do virtual Post-it pads on our Post-it notes on our journeys, and we do this. We then make improvements. We do test and learn, so you can really drill down into one particular kind of touch point and see if that's working, and that's where or we're not communicating. Really start to drill down into those and trial something. Do some A/B testing. Look at the kind of data that comes out before you start to define something. But never forget that this is not a one-off thing that you can just do and sit back and reap the rewards. As what I said, we built the journeys prior to the pandemic. We then started to make improvements to them. We then had to tweak them during the pandemic and as we're all locked down, and now we're tweaking them again. as we start to come out of it, to increase, always looking at what the customer wants, the customer needs are. We mentioned the digital fatigue, so let's have a look at dropping in some more kind of postcards, some dedicated mailings, and things to try and mix things up, but also always have an eye on what the customer wants and the customer needs are, and make sure you are hitting those every time, and just keep your maps up to date, really.
And that's where I know we had a similar experience on the software side. Squadient, we've been around for almost 30 years as a software vendor in the customer communication side, and we had to make a pitch to our management team to say we want to make journey mapping technology. And it was like, why? And then we started showing the some of the research about how the market was shifting towards higher focus, more focus on customer journeys, customer expectations, and customer retention. So we started that, and we were the first one in our market to offer customer journey mapping, and still the only one recognized as the leader by multiple analyst firms in different markets. But we noticed that there were 7 or 8 people followed us into 7 or 8 firms followed us into this area, where it is important to make that connection between what you're doing and why you're doing it across the entire suite of communications. So I had a question for you about what are the biggest barriers to kind of journey-based thinking? Is it we have too many systems below and it's hard to architect our way out of this situation? Are there too hard to train people, low visibility for something like this, or just a general lack of investment, saying we spent all of our money to survive 2020, we're not making any big bets at the moment?
I would say for it's the power that you get from a journey map and the relative cost of it, it's kind of a little bit of a no-brainer, to be honest. If you don't really know how your customers are interacting with you, on which channels and what they want and how they want to kind of receive you. I mean, most customers now, there's talk of kind of CRM kind of dying, and it should be CMR now, which is, instead of it being the businesses controlling the relationship, so customer relationship management, you've got to be 24/7 and be able to serve your customers all the way. So the customer now owns the journey. They own their data as well through kind of some of the regulations. So you've really got to make sure that you really understand that, and the customer manager. And once you've kind of got that mindset in to work within a journey, and it all be around customers, you tend to find that all your business processes, we talked about those many different kind of systems that you have in the background, they all kind of hang off the journey map. The journey map is the single kind of biggest improvement we've made to the business. That is the go-to place we have for all our information. We pivot that with our internal business process as well. So if you're kind of looking to change a business process, you can pivot out and look at the journeys that affects. And likewise, you can look at, if you're changing a journey, what business systems and processes do I need to also look at, and bring all that as. And as we're working in a matrix environment, we're able to kind of bring all that together in a pretty seamless way. So what I would say is invest in some good kind of journey mapping software. Invest in journey mapping. It will increase. It will kind of pay dividends in the long run, because it will help you manage, not only improve your customer experience, but also your employee experience by tying those two together. And it kind of enables you to kind of build that better relationship with your customer, because you really understand what their needs and wants are. And you can only get that by kind of doing some research and talking to them and finding out exactly what they want, and be quite, we need to know how customers feel now. We've talked about kind of that empathy. We're bringing feelings into the map. And that's one good thing we've got about the kind of journey maps, is we can align verbatim comments and how customers feel about certain points in the journey. And where, both positive and negative, one can start to easily identify those key points where there's failure, where there's bottlenecks, where customers are unhappy, and look to improve those. So you don't have to start from the beginning all the time. You can pick out little bits, and without mapping all of that, you've got no chance of kind of being able to improve things so quickly.
Yeah, we definitely made this for matrix organizations. That was one of the early feedbacks where people, something we kept hearing when early on in our development of the technology was people saying, I want to reach into the maps. I want to do something with the map. I want to get it done. So we did like some Jira integration on there, some task assignments, tagging, so that a variety of people can understand and get assignments through that. So it's not forcing a bunch of people to use a new technology. It's kind of just working with their tools, understanding that many organizations become matrix when they hit a certain size. So
Yeah.
we had to kind of, one thing about KPIs.
I was going to ask a question of you, if I could, please.
Yeah.
We've talked about customer experience quite a lot. We've talked about empathy quite a lot from my side. I'd be really interested to understand from Quadient's perspective. We've talked about journey mapping. We've talked about customer communication management. The next phase is kind of customer experience management and how you bring that into journeys. What's the future kind of going to be in the technology landscape for looking at orchestration and things?
Yeah, that's something that we definitely look at and care deeply about over at Quadient. Is like we're known for kind of walking the walk when it comes to customer experience. And what we usually do is we have a solid technical foundation for achieving something technically. Then we make it easy, and then we make it very scalable. So what we've done is about 5 years ago, we brought communication orchestration in here, so that if you're sending a message, you shouldn't have to care about what channel it's going out. You should just care about the message, and then the system should dedicate the channel, choose the channel, and do the delivery for you, because you need to get the message to the customer. There's some complexity about what the customer wants to receive. That should be resolved by the system so that you don't have to do it multiple times. So we're taking that and bringing that into customer journey orchestration, where we have a product called Customer Journey Explorer that does the individual journey. So if somebody started down the IVR path, maybe they got a few text messages. If you're on a sales side of contact center, they got a quote, but they didn't bite on it. We can start using some AI to nudge them back on the process. Say, oh, you know what? They said they wanted email. We have their SMS, but they stopped engaging. Let's try this other channel, so that we can start nudging them instead of making an expensive manual re-engagement from a outbound contact center. So we can try to bring them back in, or say, hey, call if there's questions. So then it's back inbound instead. So we tried to take the communications technology and get it into the contact center in the right way as soon as possible by removing the complexity. So hopefully that didn't make anybody go to sleep. Oh, I see. We got a question from a audience member.
We have. Absolutely. So a question from Scott. So what test and learn processes have you implemented, especially considering the varying demographics and channel of choice? So probably Adam, to you then, just test and learn processes based on the differing demographics. I'll put my teeth back in.
Yeah. I think I mentioned before, we kind of created a new flag in terms of digital vulnerability. To have a look at those that didn't have email or mobile numbers, so we could communicate with them in a different way. One of the big things we were looking at and had to do was to break down all of our communications into kind of 5 different key topics. So is it just information only? Are we trying to get a call to action? Do we want the customer to do something? Are we just reminding them of something? And is it an appointment reminder, or is it a notification? Or an alert, there's something gone wrong. So once we understand the nature of the message, we understand the customer and their demographics, and they've also got preferences as well, whether they want to kind of be communicated with on paper things. What we're able to do is to find the most appropriate channel for that appropriate message type, but also base that on the customer's preferences. So what's been really good about the Quadient system that we use, which is not just the mapping software, but our document composition as well, is we can we basically build once and deploy it across many things. So basically taking the customer's preferences of communication type. We also understand, as Scott mentioned earlier, we now understand if they're not responding to emails, try an SMS, or not responsive to SMS, we can use WhatsApp. So we start to build up this wave communication based on customers' requirements. And what their preferences are in terms of channel of communication. So we're able to basically take that one core message and break it down into different components and different channels based on that. Yeah. So in terms of kind of test and learn, that is part of the kind of wave technology that we put in place, and that kind of Scott mentioned, that orchestration piece. Whereas if one channel doesn't work or there's no response to it, we try a different channel, and we've had to kind of do a little bit of testing on how things work. You know, we since found out kind of during the pandemic that 86% of our customers open their emails on a smartphone. So there's no point kind of doing a big opening email for it to be read on phone. So we absolutely changed to mobile first, and we're able to adapt that to those particular customers. So all that was done by test and learn and pulling data in.
And Adam, sorry, leading on from that, you must have got a huge amount of data then, as you say, out of whether it's the testing or in response rates, outcomes, as you say, you talked about the contact centre and starting to think about changing some of those KPIs. Just in terms of that whole wealth of data, what type of information then did you go on to report to your exec, to your, to your senior directors? Because there must have been equally a storytelling process that you've had to do inside the organisation to almost keep proving the benefit of all of this customer experience focus.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there's the standard kind of NPS that kind of done, but that's kind of quite generic. And not really specific to key points that you're looking at or individual points. So, yeah, we look at kind of failure demand, people dropping off of certain journeys and having to call in. So we pick all that up through natural language selection in our telephony. So that gets reported on. We look at cost to serve as well. We look at the mix. Have done. We look at kind of journey improvements and how many steps are in there. Is it easy for a customer to do so? We have a lot of kind of return on investment as well is done. So the technology that we use, whether that's getting the right metrics. So I mean the big things that we do measurement on is response rates to communications. If there is a call to action in there, did people respond to it, and did we give the right channels for them to contact us on? So if we're driving customers towards a digital journey because it's easily self-served, we look at how many people use the website versus how many people try to then contact us by calling us. So they're the kind of key metrics and that we're trying to do. So if our communication wasn't clear, or then the web journey we sent them on wasn't clear or easy for them to self-serve, and they had to then phone us, so there's a kind of a journey abandonment rates we kind of measure metrics on. It comes down to the number of calls that are raised then. So we measure on calls coming off the back of that. So we try and use a dedicated kind of phone line to kind of track and monitor things. So we do constant improvements and tweaks to our copy and content, both digitally, online, on the app, and how we then create the right messaging hierarchy, whether we put call to action buttons at the top in an email, because we're now people looking at on the mobile, and are they interacting in the right way with what we've set up? So there's, without kind of looking at one particular comms in things, so we've got kind of whether people answer the communications or whether we have to chase them, and how they respond to us and how long that takes them to respond, and then once they've spoken to an agent or they've gone down a journey, there's a quick simple questionnaire. We try and always kind of get qualitative information rather than quantitative information as well, because we want to know how people feel about the experience that they've just had, because you could be able to do something online, but it could be a pain in the bum to do it. And I think you can kind of in your opening. So we try and create that sentiment as well around the journey, because that's really important to us in making the customer experience right.
Yeah, absolutely. Scott, have you got any final questions for Adam?
Yeah, I have one final question for Adam. Like, you have basically a 3-year lead over some of your competitors. You've powered through some naysayers, and you've delivered some powerful data to the rest of the organization, and even Centrica globally beyond British Gas. If you were one of the audience members and you wanted to pitch this type of improvement program, what would be the things that you would include in your presentation to senior management to get a journey mapping program rolling?
I think the first thing to do would be to look at what your customers want. You've got to set a strategy for your journey and what you want to achieve and what you want your customers to achieve. So it's without, you need to kind of map where you are to start with. So what working just on business principles and business processes and being able to just deliver within your own environment is kind of the route. And that's where British Gas was. We were kind of almost self-serving in our approach to product innovation. We'd always give customers a Hobson's choice, basically. Do you like this one or do you like this one? And you know, A or B, and that's what we can deliver. When you start to ask them, what do you actually want? That's when you need to have a fully orchestrated map in front of you, so you can map the customer needs. We've called them customer blueprints across our customer journey architecture framework that we have. And then you can sit down and start to plot out, what do you need to do as a business? When do you need to communicate to them? Type of information in there, and then what systems do you have in place that meets all those needs? So it's a way of tying an internal approach to business, because we've all got to kind of make money and be able to serve the customers. But it's also then aligning it with an external view, which is, this is what the customer's needs and wants are, and you kind of bring those two together, and that's what your journey map does. It aligns the outside expectations of what customers want with internal business processes, and you basically work to achieve your journey goal and improve customer experience.
Brilliant. Well, we're coming up to a couple of minutes before the hour, so I'll just, hopefully, if that's okay, I'll do a quick summary and wrap up. So thank you, Scott Drager. I think that, as you say, really informative. I think it was nice to just have more of a Q&A session rather than sort of death by PowerPoint, but certainly sounds like from a Quadient perspective that, you know, the technology has made it, you know, really easy and joined up, you know, aligned and orchestrated, as we've said, across the journey, and tailoring it for both, not just digital channels, but, you know, the non-digital channels as well. So fantastic to hear more about what Scott and Quadient can do. And Adam, it sounds like, as you said, a seismic shift in the experience focus from a British Gas perspective, and some, you know, tremendous things that you've done over the last sort of 12-18 months. And I think, yeah, particularly that point around, it was great because you had a baseline to sort of compare again, so you can see those data points now and the improvements, and, you know, almost tell that story, you know, to the exec and the rest of the business around why this matters and the difference it can make. I think it was really interesting. You talked about, as you say, almost the multidisciplinary teams. I think other businesses call them squads in some cases, where you bring in, you know, like-minded individuals, but equally, you know, people from different disciplines across the organisation to, you know, design those journeys and design those interactions and design, you know, how it should look and feel for a customer. So fantastic, you know, to hear some real life experience, Adam, from what, you know, you and the wider team have done there at British Gas. But I think finally as well, I think it was all important that you talked about, you know, customer experience, but I think also the whole employee experience, because it's important, as you say, that you're taking your colleagues on this journey and that they're not feeling like you're just, you know, making changes and doing it to them. So it feels like this has been a very inclusive process for the colleagues within British Gas. So fantastic to hear that from yourself as well, Adam. So hopefully, audience, that's been a great informative session for you. If there are any questions outside of that, then just post those to CCA. I'm sure, you know, there'll be future sessions discussing, you know, how this can, you know, certainly experience mapping and orchestration can bring, you know, tremendous value to, you know, lots of different stakeholders in the organisation. So thanks everyone for your time. Thanks to Scott, and thank you to Adam.
Thank you.
Ciao. Thank you.